and gentlemen, let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
They go lob. Johnson on the throwdown.
Oh, boy. All right. Now it's Kansas's turn.
Pettiford to inbound. Harris lost the handle. And it's over. K-State knocks off number 2.
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Yeah.
All right, a Wednesday edition of the show right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB, The Zone. Jason Anderson, Josh Brisco and Beards. Rainy morning into afternoon here. Hopefully it's not what happens on Saturday. See a little snow coming in. See that, Josh?
I sure did.
30 degrees.
I had the windows open yesterday. I got home and I did a little cleaning, airing out the house, and then today I'm thinking, boy, is it ever going to get cold again? Gary Lezak's like, bundle up, baby.
Yeah.
It's coming.
You ask, I deliver.
I got an Arctic blast for you.
That's right. Saturday in the 30s. Although it looks like the feels like is going to be right around the same temperature, so it's not going to be like, it's 30 degrees, feels like of 10. Good luck. And it looks like the snow may be starting around the fourth quarter. So don't be trailing in this game is what I would say. Although Mahomes likes snow games.
That's the thing.
It's perfectly fine.
As long as it's not being played in Jacksonville, and maybe Trevor Lawrence will forget to pack a jacket, that could really pan out.
Did you see what the weather in Atlanta is going to be next Sunday if it happens?
No, I have a guess though. In the stadium or around the stadium?
In the stadium, it's going to be like 75 and nice.
That's beautiful. I wonder how the grass is going to be.
It's going to be pretty, is what they said that weather is going to be. So we will talk some NFL football today. We'll talk some Chiefs football today. Cynthia Freeland will be our guest coming up at 11 o'clock. We'll hear from the Chiefs press conferences, coordinators, TBD, coming up at 11:45. We'll hang out with Mick Shaffer at 1 o'clock, KSHB 41 sports director. We'll get some shot clock reviews in, and oh my goodness. We have sad fans today? How do we have sad fans? Because the Chiefs didn't even play.
Are we even allowed to have sad fans when it's not Chiefs adjacent?
Are there sad fans outside of who the Chiefs beat on a weekly basis?
Occasionally.
Oh, my goodness.
Occasionally. I still need to edit it down, so it will be ready, though.
So you need to add some beeps in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's just play it raw this week, Beards.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it right now.
We'll do it live. I'll do it. I'll write it. We'll do it live.
Yeah, in fact, why don't you just print off the copy, basically, and let's just let Jason read it, and we'll play the music live underneath him.
You had a copy. I could watch the copy. So we can edit it down. Coming up with Mick Shaffer in the 1 o'clock hour, we'll hear some sad fans from Reddit. Looking forward to that. 913-912-4810 is the text line to be a part of the show, part of the conversation. 913-912-4810, the text line to join us. Let's start off with some college basketball, some college hoops. Last night, Kansas State getting the win in overtime, 83-82. And I feel like there's a debate on whether or not that was an entertaining game. The flow wasn't great, but it was a KU-K-State battle that went into overtime and was a one-point game. And K-State jumped out early, and they were feeling it. And you knew they would have the crowd behind them, but how quickly could KU limit that or stop that or start to carve into the crowd in which it quiets them like they did in Columbia? That was pretty quick when they made like 17 straight shots. Crowd was gone. That didn't happen because K-State didn't let it happen. And KU fought back, did what they had to do, took a lead in the game. And it comes down to a possession here or there, a terribly timed timeout by Bill Self, some good defense by K-State, foul trouble that took place with both teams, but it really, really got KU. Phenomenal out of a timeout play by Jerome Tang with an alley-oop. There was so much in this game that was to take away from it. that I don't really want to focus on. I don't even know if that was an entertaining game. I had a blast watching it because I've been looking forward to this game, and it was what I thought it would be. I knew this game would be a tough physical game. Now, I think college basketball could have better officiating. I think it's been an issue for a long time. And I think it is one of the sports that we say, what's this matchup? Well, I don't know. How are they going to officiate it? Are they going to let them play? Are they going to call it close? Like, well, why don't they just officiate it the way that they're supposed to? Do we have freedom of movement? Or are we wrestling? Or are we playing 2008 Big East basketball? Like, what are we doing here? So I knew that was going to be the case. Like, I had a feeling I didn't think it was going to be 83-82. I'm glad I didn't press the button on the under when the live betting got to over-under of 161.5 with like 10 minutes to go in the first half. I'm like, they aren't getting into the 80s here. All right. KU's not going to keep turning the ball over, and they'll get rolling. They'll start playing defense, and this game will slow down, more back and forth. It's not going to get into the 80s. Glad I did not go with the under 161 because overtime, and it happens, and that ended up hitting and going over the total even in the live betting. But to me, I had fun watching it, mainly because I didn't have the, those crazy emotions that are going on back and forth. I just sat back and watched and didn't care who won because I didn't bet on this game. Because I didn't want to bet on this game because I didn't want to have one side or the other, me rooting for one thing just to sit back and watch it. So I placed some money on some other games. I didn't even live bet because I didn't want to start rooting one. And I almost broke that because KU got to plus 11.5 with 10 minutes to go in the first half. And I'm like, that seems like they're just giving you money. And KU's not going to get blown out in this game. They're not going to lose by double digits. They'll come back. This will be a close game. They'll have the lead at some point. This is just what happens in these games. Nope, because then I'll be rooting for KU to come back in that one, and I just want to watch the game and take notes and see what happens. So I enjoyed it. I had a blast watching, and I know there are some things that can be improved upon in college basketball. I don't know that will ever happen to be improved upon. Is it a well-played, great flow basketball game when there's 67 free throws and almost 50 fouls that are called in a game? Probably not. But I will say it makes it more difficult when you have physical players on the floor that are attacking and putting the defense in tough situations and, quite frankly, putting the officials in tough situations. Do we call the foul? Do we not call the foul? The difference is they didn't have to do the, what I call the oftentimes the magic 8-ball officiating of like, somebody drives in and they shake it and they go, is it a foul? It is decidedly so.
Ask again later. Well, we can't do that. Can we review this?
Is that a foul? Better not tell you now. We're going to, no call.
No call then, I guess.
Keep going. I know there was a lot of contact there, and we've called less contact a foul down there or down here, whatever it might be, but we're just going to let that one go. Guys, hit the floor. All good. Let's get up. Let's play. My sources say no. Play on. As I see it, yes. Boop. That's two shots. So, yeah, college basketball gets in to those particular things. But both teams attacking physical players. Jalen Wilson is a physical player. KJ Adams is a physical player. Keontae Johnson is a bus. He is a Mack truck out on the court. Quick aside, sort of just stream of conscious on this game as I say Keontae Johnson is a truck. Jalen Wilson was phenomenal in this game. And not only the 38 points, which people may focus on, his defense on Keontae Johnson was unreal. And again, you're talking about a really physical player in Keontae Johnson. I enjoyed it. It was big for K-State. I said yesterday that if K-State was going to split in this series, last night was the one to get. And Noel didn't play great. He certainly would have liked to play a better game. He made some big plays. He still had 4 steals in the game. Johnson stepped up. Desi Sills had a huge game in stepping up for the production that they were missing from Marquise Noel. But also, KU typically doesn't miss as many free throws as they did. Doesn't miss as many threes as they did. Grady Dick doesn't go, 1 of 7, from
1 of 8.
From 1 of 8 from 3. So there are some things that you can take away from both teams when they head to Lawrence and say, boy, if K-State, you did that without Marquise Noel. Right, and KU did that with a lot of foul trouble, missing free throws, and missing threes. So if you were going to get one, if you were K-State, last night was the night to get one. I don't come away from this game feeling any different, really, about these two teams. That these are the two best teams in the Big 12. Those two and Iowa State tied atop. And I thought K-State was going to win last night. So not really any overarching takeaway different coming out of the game than I thought going into the game. Josh, what did you take away? What did you see?
I think you've got to have at least a little bit of a takeaway,
Nope.
or a little bit that changes how you
Don't
view
tell me what I have to have.
just the Kansas State side, because when I was trying to see what the exact score was, 59-57, 8 minutes left when KU takes the lead back. For the first time in what felt like 6 months, because this game did take its time.
I think they last lead was at 17 minutes of the first half.
And then in the year 2027, they ended up tying it back up and taking the lead again.
That makes sense.
I guess it was tied at 69-69 because Grady Dick hit a free throw to do that. I remember that for reasons that, I don't even know that I could understand. But I was ready to say I don't feel any differently about either of these teams if this final score would have been reversed. Because what I needed to see from K-State to fully recalibrate how I should feel about this team and the rest of the Big 12 in some ways, because of how deep the top of the conference is, which is arguably like 6 or 7, but really it's 3 for sure, 4. I guess we want to reach down and invite Baylor back up. But what I saw from K-State was build the lead, get your home crowd, take this game over. Oh, God, here comes the Jayhawks. They're built for this. This is what they do. Wait a second. It's not all collapsing around us. This K-State team is just as resilient as the KU team is as a master of the comeback, of owning the Big 12 in Allen Fieldhouse, but certainly being the consistent threat on the road. To be able to defend your home floor in that fashion, to say, we're taking it early, we're going to hold back your comeback, we are not going to be fazed by all of your counter punches. Lesser teams are fazed by that from Kansas all the time because they are exceptional at it and have been forever. So even as a bit of a K-State optimist, I picked KU going into this game, not with any real confidence, but stupid. I know, what a dummy. But what I see
off,
from,
by the way.
I know, I had KU -2. I thought maybe 3 points would do it. I was off by at least 4. But what I saw from K-State is a resilience that is required in March, a resilience that is required to be an actual contender and not just a nice story. And seeing that from K-State, I really do think is meaningful.
And I guess I didn't lose much from my thoughts on K-State when they played TCU on the road. In the Big 12, you're going to have games like that. There are too many good teams for you to bring it every single night, especially on the road against a good TCU team, a physical team. Like, you're going to have some of those. KU is going to lose a game in the Big 12 by more than a point, because so far that's all they've done. By more than they have not lost a game in regulation. They have not trailed at the end of regulation in 6 games, has KU so far this year. That's going to happen because it's too tough of a league. So I didn't lose much of what I felt K-State was this year in that TCU game. So I guess me coming out of this game, it was Texas did a lot for me. What maybe last night did a lot for people, for K-State. Going to Texas and winning and continuing to fight, continuing to have to step up and make plays. That Texas was playing phenomenal basketball. That atmosphere is great. Texas is good. I know they went to Iowa State and struggled last night, or at least struggled towards the end. It was a back-and-forth game. But that was in Ames. K-State was in Austin and did that. So you've got to be able to do some of those things where you can overcome when you don't have the crowd behind you, when you don't have that packed arena that's screaming and yelling for you and you feel that energy for you, it's against you in other places like it was at Texas. I took so much away from that Texas game that I knew that this K-State team I felt was legit. They're good. They are not only a tournament team, we're talking about what seed are they, and are they a second weekend team? So last night, it's one of the reasons why I picked K-State, because I thought these two teams would split, because I thought K-State would be able to beat KU last night. But to your point, I'll grant you.
I don't want you to grant me anything.
No, I'm going to grant it.
I'm going to take it.
I'm granting this to
I
you.
don't
I'm
need
writing it right
anything
here.
from you. I'm going to take this from you here in a second.
This
Go
is
ahead.
a grant,
Go ahead
and you
take
can
your
have
point.
it when I pass. I am going to.
You don't pass very often.
I do not. No, I don't. I like to shoot. It's a black hole. You throw it to me, I'm shooting. Sorry, it's your fault. I mean, you shouldn't have passed it to me, you idiot.
Carmelo Anderson.
Darn right.
I'm going to write that one down.
So to grant you what you were saying, there were plays that had to be made by K-State late in the game, whether that be offensively or on the defensive side. And they made them. They forced the issue. When Grady Dick had 4 fouls, they forced the issue. When KJ Adams had 4 fouls, they forced the issue. McCullers had 4 fouls, forced the issue. I did think it was interesting when KJ Adams had 3 and McCullers had 4, and they called the foul on McCullers, and Bill Self was yelling that it was on KJ Adams. No, it's on KJ. Like, Bill, that gives him 4.
Hey, I think, you know what, we should let this one go, actually.
Bill, KJ Adams more important than McCullers in this game. Just saying. He didn't want to lose either of them.
I saw Zach Clemens clothesline him.
Zach, walk out there. Walk out. You can't even walk out there right. I just want you to just walk on the floor. That's all I want you to do is just sit down. You know what? Sit down. So K-State made those plays. Jerome Tang with a phenomenal out of the timeout, out of bounds play with the alley-oop. You also have to execute that play because Noel had to put that pass there. That was Mahomes to Kelsey-esque. It was perfect. He was throwing it as Johnson was starting to spin back to the bucket, and then Johnson rising, catching it, flushing it, and them taking the lead. It was a phenomenal play. A lot of things had to happen. You're right. Some teams could have folded there, and maybe it's different when you're in Austin and everybody's feeling it, as opposed to you're playing a KU team that Noel just didn't have it. Just wasn't a night for Marquise Noel. Ends up with 4 points on, 8 shots. Didn't take a free throw. First time this year he has not attempted a free throw, Marquise Noel. Well, you're not beating Kansas when you've got 4 points from Noel. You're not. No free throws. It's not going to happen. Jalen Wilson has 38. Marquise Noel had 4. Okay, KU wins by 15. I mean, that's what you would expect to happen. So there is something to be gained. I can see it from that standpoint of winning that game in that way when it was as physical and grueling and grinding of a game to win that one. Whoever won that game was going to earn it, and whoever came out on the losing end had nothing to be ashamed of.
But also mentally, though, I mean, everything we talked about yesterday with Jerome Tang and his comments leading up to the game, and I'm excited to have the conversation about what he did post-game because I just think there's a ton to unpack there that is, like, out of character for most head coaches in sports, really. And in college basketball might be the time you could do something like Tang did. I'm excited to get to that eventually. But
yes.
But the part of it that I think is much more varied than that is how does Jerome Tang's message this week land if that shot, if Bill Self doesn't get the timeout call, the 3 falls, KU goes on to win that game. There's obviously no, storming the court and pep rally on the court after the game, but there is an entirely different attitude that comes out of all of this. Oh, it's about us. Oh, it's about K-State. Oh, we're legit. Oh, look what we went and did in Texas. Yeah, that TCU game was, that TCU game, maybe that's a snowballing. Maybe we're a team that actually isn't quite as legitimate as we thought we were. Oh, maybe we're going to be the second best team in the Big 12, but we're going to lose to Kansas twice in 2 weeks. Like, that's the type of place where I think you lose ground with a program that has so clearly been gaining momentum and gaining ground over the course of this entire season. To be able to, again, just weather that storm, to take those punches. I think Tang said right before the half that it was going to be a game of jabs, right, in his little pre-halftime interview. there were no knockout punches. And he's right. There weren't. It was punch, 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 punch.
Body
and
blows.
to stand up to that against Kansas, and not just the number 2 team in the country, but your Kansas, that matters, because that puts weight behind everything he said this week, and it put weight behind what he said last night.
Let's hear from Jerome Tang. After the game was over, court storming, fans on the floor, Jerome Tang on the scorer's table with a microphone in his hand and the message he had to the fans out there on the floor.
This is not about who we just beat. This is about us winning. KSU. It is amazing what you can accomplish when you do it out of a motive of love and joy and passion. Now, I told y'all, we'll get you one court storming. From here on out, expect to win.
I don't know that I've seen a coach charge up and rile up a WWE promo with a crowd at the same time sort of admonishing them.
Yeah.
At the same time, sort of like, the old,
Shame,
scrape your
shame.
finger, the shame.
Uh-huh.
Shame on you for doing that. This is about us. It is about this, who we are, not who we beat. I liked that. I told you I'd get you one court storming. From here on out, expect to win.
And then he got off the table. That was the dismount there, right? That line rules. All the bleep KU chant stuff and all of that. Yeah. I could be I could be wavered one way or the other. I'd say I'd get you one court storming and then expect to win. Mic drop. Freaking rules. That's got to be on a bunch of purple T-shirts by end of day today, if not by end of night last night. That's awesome. And you can't do that. Simple enough. You can't do that if you don't win the game. That opportunity, that moment does not happen if Jalen Wilson's shot is allowed to splash.
I do want to hear Jerome Tang real quick before we break on the reason he addressed the crowd. Did you see the shot of Jerome Tang as the game was getting ready to start and the K-State crowd was doing the FKU chant?
I don't
as they
think
were going
I did see that.
Oh.
I knew he wasn't pleased with it.
You know what? In the break,
I heard
I'm going to pull up the game broadcast and show you that, because he did one of those sort of like, you've asked somebody to do something. Like if you've got kids, you would know this. But you've asked somebody to do something, they don't do it, and you just sort of like stare in the air, like, is this really happening?
Is this okay?
Like I feel like okay, all right, well, just got to move on. He was not happy about it, and so Jerome Tang, after the game in the press conference, the reason he gave for why he addressed the crowd after the game.
Well, I was really disappointed in the introduction when our students started chanting the FKU chant. It's like crap. I hadn't gotten it across yet, and there's work to be done. I really want them to understand that, we don't have to degrade the other team. We can dislike them all, but let's cheer for us. Let's just let America hear Kansas State and not hear the other name, whoever, you know what I mean? And so that's all that's about. I believe we can have a terrific culture here because of the passion of our fans. And somebody has to say it, right? We just can't that's kids will be kids. That's not, somebody has to say it. And I tell you, if we're losing, then maybe my voice doesn't carry as much weight. But thankfully, God's given us this platform. We're winning. It's His platform, and I can speak on some of those things because this is a special place. And man, happiness. This is a really special place, and I want the country to know how special it is, not be known for the dumb chant.
I'm showing Josh the video there at the beginning as the fans were chanting FKU. The look on he is annoyed.
The squint and the slight
and then he sort of does a
shake.
Slight head shake, but he doesn't want to be overtly annoyed because He wants that crowd the rest of the game.
You remember Mike from Breaking Bad? I don't know why, but that's what I felt like Jerome Tang was doing there. Just like this stoic, slightly squinty-eyed kind of.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe a little underbite. I can't believe. Can I tell you what the one piece of that Jerome Tang clip that I adore? I don't mind one bit college kids being obscene. I think KU and K-State hating each other is good for both teams in the grand scheme of things. But this is the part of it that jumped out to me in that clip, and that is sort of the core of when we talked about it yesterday that I thought makes sense. Let America hear Kansas State, not the other name.
Yeah.
Run for office, man. That is a politicked message of perfection. That thing is at a fine point. He could get a seat somewhere on the message of, we want the world to hear our name, not us chanting their name. That's a pretty good attitude to have. Of all of the things where I think there's some wiggle room around all the chanting and all the sportsmanship and all that, we want America to hear Kansas State is a great line.
I need Roy Williams to return to KU. And here's why. I'm sick and tired of liking the opposing team's coaches. And the one thing I hate about Bill Self is that I like him so much. And I loved Frank Martin. And I can't help but really like Jerome Tang. And I'm sick and tired of liking. Roy Williams was, he was Darth Vader. It was easy to hate Roy. So I felt like he was kind of a fraud. But it was easy to hate Roy, But damn it, I like Bill Self. And I really liked Frank Martin. Indifferent on Bruce Weber. You can ask Fran Fischel about it. I told Fran once. But man,
talks to a lot of people.
I really like Jerome Tang. I do. And I'm really hoping that Dennis Gates is in that realm. Not of Bill Self. Bill Self's two-time national champion. We'll see what Jerome Tang ultimately will be. Dennis Gates not doing what Jerome Tang is doing in year number 1, because it's absurd that somebody could do that. So, again, as I said last week or the week before, that Jerome Tang is ruining the curve for every other first-year head coach. Dennis Gates is getting a 90, but because Jerome Tang got a 100, he gets no extra credit for it. He gets no bump because of that. He's doing a phenomenal job at Mizzou, and tonight's a very big game for them. So I'm really hoping that the three schools have a really healthy program foundation moving forward, that we know what KU is. We got a pretty damn good idea of what Jerome Tang can do at K-State. And early on, seeing what Dennis Gates can get going at Mizzou. Again, tonight's a big one, but even if they struggle down the stretch and just make the tournament or whatever, just a far cry of what this team is from what they've looked like the last couple of years. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling. Do want to hear some more from Jerome Tang and also from Bill Self. And an important player last night that I don't think is being talked about enough as being one of the biggest players and difference makers, or lack thereof, when not on the court last night. We'll talk about that coming up next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
This guy has a rough luck with the mouth.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Cynthia Freeland coming up at 11 o'clock, NFL Network analytics expert. Chiefs press conferences around 11:45. Mick Shaffer, KSHB 41 sports director. Sad fans today. Some shot clock reviews as well. 913-912-4810 to be a part of the show, part of the conversation. 913-912-4810 to join us. Let's hear Bill Self weighing in on what happened in the game last night.
I mean, there's a lot of things. I thought K-State played great early, and we didn't have any answer for them. And then when it kind of settled down, we played a lot better. I'd have to study it. The first thing I want to say though is, we don't get a shot at the end of regulation into overtime. I mean, that's on me. So, didn't get a shot. So, and then. I call timeout when Jalen makes a bomb too, so that could have been the difference in winning and losing right there too. But we don't get a shot at the end of regulation in overtime. We don't get a stop at the end of the first half. They scored 2, and then we don't get a stop at game point on a lob. So to me, those 4 plays were the difference in the basketball game. I mean, they can look at, well, we didn't do this or that. We can look at, we didn't do this or that. I mean, heck, we're 6 of 29 from 3. So, but we did enough stuff to put us in position to win, which if you told me before the game that we'd have the ball at the end with a chance to win twice, I'd say that'd probably be something that we'd probably sell out for. So I'm proud of our guys. I thought we fought hard. I thought we competed. I mean, we got a makeshift lineup out there. I had 3 guys out there that never played at game point. But still yet, not an excuse. We got to do a little bit better, and certainly I got to do a better job of helping them.
Those 4 plays, the end of the first half, end of regulation, the lob, alley-oop, and then end of overtime. Those back-to-back plays there in overtime. You can also throw in before the lob was the unfortunately timed timeout by Bill Self. Although, had he known that Jalen Wilson was going to bury an NBA 3, I don't think he would have called timeout. But at that point, when it was very disconnected and there were 5 seconds on the shot clock and you're up by 1 with 40 seconds to play, let's get together here and let's draw something up because we're up 1. This is a pretty important possession. And settling for an NBA 3, well, guess what? If I draw something up and it doesn't work, we could probably get that same shot in about 5 or 6 seconds. But if I draw up a play and it works, we get a better shot. We can go up 3 here. We feel like we've got a pretty good hold on this game. But those 3 possessions were interesting. The end of the first half, this may be a freshman mistake. There were 15 seconds left. KU had the ball in the open floor. They were down 4 points, 42-38. And Grady Dick attacks and goes to the hole. He gets fouled, right? He gets fouled, okay. Not the worst thing. But you're down 4, and in your mind you're thinking, at worst, you take the last shot, you're down 4. Worst thing you can possibly be down is 4 points if you take the last shot. He had an advantage in terms of a one-on-one, and he got fouled. So it wasn't like a 2-on-1 and an easy play. But he goes to the free throw line, and he only hits 1. Goes 1 of 2. So they then are down 42-39. K-State, by virtue of getting another possession, Johnson hits the shot. So with 15 seconds left on the ball, KU's down 4. They go into half down 5. 1 point in a game like this is a big deal. Obviously, everything changes the rest of the way. It's not like, well, they would have won by 1 in a regulation. It was tied. And then I think KJ Adams not being in the game was crucial. I had noted it when he went out that, okay, you got Zuby, you got Clements in the game. Those are the guys that are going to have to fill in for KJ Adams. And when Bill Self says they didn't get a shot off at the end of regulation and the end of overtime, I think KJ Adams not being in there is a pretty big reason. Both of those plays looked like it was a setup for Jalen Wilson. DeJuan Harris had the ball. It was a screen from Zuby. He was then not rolling. He was just then turning at the top of the key, waiting for the ball. Yesufu was setting a screen on the backside for Jalen Wilson, who was curling around, and I think Zuby was going to get the ball, get it to Jalen Wilson in motion with two guys trying to figure out what they're going to do. Guarding Jalen Wilson, do you go over the screen, under the screen? If you go under the screen, Jalen Wilson's got some room to work. You go over and trail. Now he can turn the corner and go to the bucket and maybe get fouled. That was the play. But because DeJuan Harris and Zuby don't have that chemistry on the floor, is KJ Adams different? Does DeJuan Harris throw the ball differently to KJ Adams? Does KJ Adams seal and hold that left arm out so that Tomlin can't get the ball and start to get that steal and get it up to Keontae Johnson? So that was one where the play was set up in my estimation for Jalen Wilson. And at the end of overtime, who was the pick and roll guy? Zach Clements. And you can blame DeJuan Harris. You can blame just circumstance. But as Clements was coming up and going towards to set a screen for DeJuan Harris, Harris was already dribbling to the left, so Clements never gets a screen, never even touches the guy. Is that a chemistry thing? Where maybe KJ Adams is in a different spot to where he believes where DeJuan Harris is going to go and Clements isn't in the game a lot? Did DeJuan Harris just panic? I don't know at that. But I know Clements and Zuby aren't typically the guys that are helping to initiate some offense with a screen and roll late in the game because they don't play their bench very often.
Yep.
I also think depth is overrated in college basketball. I think it's good for the course of a season. In an individual game in the tournament, 7 players is typically what you need to go and win a game. Some games you get into foul trouble. When there are 50 fouls called, yeah, you need some depth in that game. Okay. NCAA tournament typically lets them play a little bit more. They typically let them, they don't like fouling guys out in the NCAA tournament. They want the players to be out there and play. So you don't need as much depth. But I thought KJ Adams going out and then Zuby and Clements being in there, whether it's different plays throughout the game, but those 2 plays specifically, you could just tell the timing was off on the screener for DeJuan Harris. And both times they didn't get a shot off because it was a steal and then DeJuan Harris losing the ball. And the game being over at that time.
I'm trying to remember which play it was where Harris also really hesitated on the feed to Clements that makes you think DeJuan Harris isn't new here. I think he probably knows where everyone's supposed to be on the floor. That's kind of his deal. And so whenever you see him hesitate, you wonder if somebody's out of position or if he's just not. Maybe he just saw something he wanted to pull back and it was already too late. But yeah, there were absolutely those little blips in the offense for Kansas, and I think you're right about the bench and everything. There have been plenty of times over the years where I think Bill Self has gotten largely fair criticism about not playing the younger guys enough in conference play because that conference streak was pretty impressive, but does it hurt you in March? We've been having that conversation for years, and that's not this conversation. This is, man, you had a game with 49 fouls. You lost KJ Adams. You end up losing Grady Dick. You lose McCullough. You have guys forced into action.
Yeah.
And what your guys do in that spot, frankly, I don't think you can know until it happens. Hey, we got some dudes who haven't been in this spot before. You're on the road in overtime in Manhattan. How are you going to perform? We'll find out, and then hopefully that adds a little experience for their next time in a similar situation.
And I think the final play was a setup for Jalen Wilson, too. And credit to Desi Sills because as DeJuan Harris was supposed to be getting the screen, Jalen Wilson was flashing and cutting into the lane, and Desi Sills cut him off and was just physical with him to cut him off. And I think the play probably was you get the screen from DeJuan Harris. You want him to turn the corner, going downhill, and make Noel make a decision. Do I come and help on DeJuan and leave Yesufu, a good shooter, wide open on the wing? And if DeJuan Harris turns the corner and has an angle and Noel wants to sort of half play it, do I reach towards that, but I'm also playing Yesufu? Well, now you're going to force Desi Sills, who is on that side of the paint, fronting Jalen Wilson, to then come over and help, which then would leave DeJuan Harris to either finish or give it to Jalen Wilson. The play could have worked. Also, depending on how K-State would have played it. Maybe they play it perfectly, even if Zach Clements gets the screen there, if that chemistry is a little bit better. But it was definitely disjointed there. Yes. And once it went around, and then Zach Clements' guy, and I can't remember who it was able to slide off, Masood, I think is who it was able to slide off his guy because it was supposed to be a screen, so he's going to come out and hedge, and then goes down with DeJuan Harris. Once that happened, it felt like the whole thing was sort of disjointed. And at that time, you were going to need somebody to make a play outside of the structure of whatever that play was going to be. And it didn't happen because you were in a congested area with a guy on the floor who is the nation's Big 12 leader in steals in Noel. And he can get a hand in there, knock the ball away, and then it's a scrum. And at that point, you need a miracle. Whether he was laying out of bounds or not.
He was.
He was.
He was.
Absolutely.
Whether you care about that or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people
that
probably
stuff
would care.
happens.
But
that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Calls like that get missed.
Right. Absolutely.
He was out of bounds, though.
Yeah, he was out of bounds with 1.5 or something like that. But I've also heard that
the refs didn't want to be the story in that game, Jason. Right. I mean, they just wanted to get out of the way.
I was also told with Texas Tech and Oklahoma State that you just can't. You got to let them play. You just can't blow the whistle there and have the refs get involved in some of those plays. You got to let them play.
And the refs were consistent about that, and that's important.
Let the players decide that you just got to let the players play late in the game. You got to swallow your whistle if you're the official. So you can't really have it both ways there. But I thought KJ Adams fouling out of that game was pretty crucial. And maybe a better and it's not a shot at Zuby or Clements. That's not what I'm trying to say here, because those guys are who they are right now.
Yeah.
It's more of an appreciation of what KJ Adams does for this team that I probably didn't have at different times with this team. Like, KJ Adams is a good player, but he's a good player based on the guys around him. And he's been better than that. And you can see the chemistry guys out there, what he can do. And I think if he was the screener on both of those plays, I think they get a shot off on one of them at least. I think they shoot. I don't know if they win, but I think they shoot the ball on at least one of them. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, wrap up this hour next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. You're in the zone.
Food here?
Yeah, we'll keep asking questions.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Jesse.
With Jason Anderson.
I was just curious. Do you
Harry, I'm sorry, the food's here.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll talk some NFL football with Cynthia Freeland. Probably get back into some basketball with Mick Shaffer coming up at 1 o'clock and maybe sprinkled in throughout as well. But a lot of talk about KU K-State in this first hour. K-State winning 83-82. KU K-State, Iowa State all tied atop the Big 12 at 5-1. Both teams getting ready for home games on Saturday. KU TCU, K-State Texas Tech. Both games over before the Chiefs start. Mizzou? Nah, we're going to start at halftime. Cool. You know what I won't be watching? Mizzou, Alabama. That's what I won't be watching this weekend. Also, probably wouldn't be watching the second half of that anyway, since the team that Alabama is. They might be the best team in America. They're amazing.
Hey, Mizzou and the Chiefs, those games might both be over at halftime.
I think they will.
This Sports Center is brought to you by Greenlight Dispensary. Check out Greenlight Dispensary for their outstanding customer service and superior product, and discover why Greenlight is continuously voted Missouri's best. Open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. For more information and to find a location near you, visit them online at greenlightdispensary.com. The Sunflower Showdown lived up to expectations last night in Manhattan, with Jerome Tang's Wildcats taking down the Jayhawks in overtime 83-82. Kansas got 38 points and 9 rebounds from Jalen Wilson, but Keontae Johnson and Desi Sills led K-State in scoring with 24 points apiece. The Chiefs will get their first playoff action of the year at 3:30 on Saturday when they take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Frank Clark was limited in practice yesterday with a groin injury, and McCole Hardman did not practice. Jody Fortson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire returned, but will remain on IR. We're talking about Wild Card Weekend and where the Chiefs go from here with Cynthia Freeland of NFL Network next in The Zone.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Because there are more better, this is bad English, there are more better quarterbacks.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I will hear from the Chiefs coming up later on this hour. Coordinator Day. And we'll see which players are going to be at the podium today getting ready for the rematch. Week 10. November 13th, Chiefs and Jags, 10-point win for the Chiefs. They're favored by 8.5 coming up this weekend. Joining us now, analytics expert from NFL Network, Cynthia Freeland, joining us here in The Zone. Cynthia, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Looking forward to the Chiefs in action this weekend. We will see what happens with that. But I wanted to start off with the games this past weekend, especially in the AFC. Were you surprised that, especially two of them, Buffalo and Miami, and the Bengals-Ravens games, were you surprised that they ended up being that close and the two heavy favorites had to fight to the end to win them?
You know, I mean, I think it'd be hard to say you're not surprised by the Jags game because, I mean, that game was basically over, and then somehow by, like, some miracle of, like Doug Peterson pulling a rabbit out of his hat yet again, like, that happened. But I'm not going to say I wasn't like super surprised about the Bills outcome. I mean, the reality is you know, the Dolphins defense is maybe a bit underrated. And when you're looking at that underrated defense, you're saying, okay, if they can get pressure and cause turnovers, sure. And also the YOLO balls from the third string quarterback are really hard to overcome because there's not a lot of film on these guys. And when you don't have a lot of film on someone, they can trick you a little bit. They can trip you up. So it's not to say that, you know, I was surprised that it became what it became, but you know, turnovers are going to cause that. So very surprised by the Jags, not so surprised by the Dolphins keeping it close against a team they know very well, third time seeing them this season.
Yeah, and Ravens-Bengals. I mean, I also think, like, divisional matchups, like how much does that play in some of these closer games that you've got Buffalo-Miami and then Baltimore-Cincinnati? You've seen those teams so many times. You know what they do. You know what to expect. You know the tendencies and little wrinkles. They may break out something new, some unscouted looks, but by the time you're playing them, how many unscouted looks would you actually see? I think that certainly is part of it when you see divisional opponents going up against each other in the wild card round.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's just interesting. It's just interesting when you see that, like, all of these rematches. Like, you do have like another element of like these wrinkles that these smart teams with smart coaches who obviously can get to the playoffs doing things that they, you know, adding in just a little bit here and a little bit there. In fact, I saw it more in the Giants game when you saw like just these like little tiny wrinkles that Brian Daboll was able to add in, like changing Isaiah Hodgins just in the lineup, like pulling him out wide just at the last second, which confused Patrick Peterson and Harrison Smith just enough, right?
Yeah.
Those are the types of things where like those rematches, and I know they're not division opponents, but that was a rematch from a recent game. So you do get that advantage of being able to kind of say, oh, I saw that one. I got that one. I got to play for that this time. I got you here.
Yeah, the divisional opponent thing is why I was perfectly fine avoiding the Chargers for the Chiefs, because I joked on Monday that the Chargers in the first 28 minutes looked like how they play against the Chiefs, and the final 32 minutes is what it looks like when they play everybody else. So it just feels like they are world beaters when they go up against Kansas City. Cynthia Freeland is our guest. So we know quarterback is the biggest factor when it comes to winning Super Bowls, winning in the playoffs, making plays outside of the structure, doing some of those things. Is there one particular, maybe a couple bigger factors that you look at outside of quarterback, especially, divisional round on, that can separate and be the difference of a win or a loss in a closer one-possession game?
Totally. Tendencies, right? Like you saw it, you see like how much man versus zone someone's playing, how often a team is like blitzing versus not blitzing. You see these things like, look, we talk about it all the time. In fact, I know it's, again, not a divisional opponent, but we saw it with Leslie Frazier and figuring out not to blitz Patrick Mahomes like early on compared to other people. Now that tendency has broken, and we have to look at different things. But, you see those things where you see the breaking of the tendency, and also something that Lou Anarumo has showed us is that his ability in the second half to really adapt the defense to what he's seeing on offense and change the outcome of games. So that's the kind of thing you're really seeing. And by the way, the Bengals, that's what happened against the Ravens, keeping that one close, and obviously winning with a crazy situation there.
Yeah, visiting with Cynthia Freeland. That's interesting, the breaking the tendencies and adjusting at halftime, and the whole tendency thing. It sparks in my mind. Patrick Mahomes talked yesterday, and he was asked about the defense for the Jags, and he discussed Caldwell as the defensive coordinator for the Jags, and said, when he was with the Bucs, he was a linebackers coach, but he said when he was with the Bucs, when we faced him the first time in 2020, that they played almost a different scheme than when we saw him in the Super Bowl. Like, so many things were switched up, and he goes, I'm expecting that this go around, that this he's not going to come out and they're not going to play the same coverage schemes that we saw the first go around. And so the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, who's been there, done that, smart enough. He's the oldest quarterback in the AFC playoffs remaining.
Which is wild.
Totally is wild. It makes my stomach churn just a little bit. Like, no, we can't say Mahomes is old. Stop it. He's still young. He's this wonderkind. Leave him alone. Father Time, get away. But it's like he's been there, done that, and even to know that going in, like, all right, these are the things that happened in the first game, but I'm not going to expect those things this go around. So I got to be prepared for whatever else Caldwell's going to throw my way.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at it. The tendencies that the Jags have had all season long are, like, really bad when you're trying to face the Chiefs. First, they've given up the most yards and the most, like, it's like the fourth highest completion percentage and the most yards per attempt to tight ends. Yeah, don't do that against the Chiefs, number one. And two, the slot has been an area of huge vulnerability for them. Also, another place you're not going to want to mess up when you're facing the Chiefs. So they're going to have to break their tendencies unless they want to try to just do crazy things and have another 27-point comeback, which I don't think that's in their game plan this time. I think they're going to try not to do that this time.
Yeah, you should avoid that if you're doing it. It would be advantageous for them not to fall behind.
Just to guess that they're not going to want to do that.
Don't fall behind 27-0. Cynthia Freeland is our guest. If you're guessing, and the answer is probably somewhere in the middle, but are the Jags closer to the first 28 minutes when they were struggling and they looked pretty awful, or the final 32 minutes when they looked just unstoppable? What is this Jags team that we've seen throughout the year now? Which team do you think they are closer to in that Jekyll and Hyde game against the Chargers?
That's kind of how their whole season has gone, right? Like, that's like a perfect encapsulation of their season. I think they're getting stronger and better in key areas. So the answer is they're probably somewhere in between, meaning, like, you have seen an uptick in pressure over the past several weeks. You've seen, I think since actually right before the season, maybe like week 9, there have like almost a 40% pressure rate, second in the NFL, only to guys like, the Eagles. So they have had key things get better, like that pressure rate, and obviously they invested a first-round pick in Trayvon Walker and a lot of money in that defense. But you have still seen some areas where they aren't great, meaning if you can't get Trevor Lawrence to get play action going, then it's a long day for them. Play action is kind of like their linchpin, right? If play action works, great. If not so great. And then, of course, without their left tackle, Cam Robinson, becomes significantly harder to keep that run game consistent. So while I think that game was interesting, I think they are somewhere in between. They're very, very improved over last season, and you see that resilience and that fortitude and their ability to adjust is really great. But on some level, they are still missing some really key pieces that would be necessary to forecast them to beat the likes of, the Chiefs or the Bengals or the Bills.
What do you make of the Jags' offensive line? Because one of the things we've discussed around here is the defense for the Chiefs and the importance of them continuing to put pressure and sack the quarterback. They had 55 this year, which is many more than they had a year ago, which was a big issue that they could not bring the quarterback down, and it cost them in the AFC Championship game of pressuring Burrow but not being able to bring him down. They're doing that more this year. They got 5 sacks against Joe Burrow, but if I remember right, they got 5 sacks against Burrow with fewer pressures than the Jags got on Mahomes, but the Jags sacked Patrick Mahomes 0 times. What do you make of the Jags offensive line? You mentioned Cam Robinson. Scherf did not practice, but it's sort of the same thing that he went through last week, and he played every snap. So what do you think of this Jags offensive line as they enter Kansas City on Saturday?
Well, it's interesting because you've seen them, like last week, what you saw was a really smart adjustment in the second. And, like, obviously, look, I'm not going to pretend that, like, Joey Bosa didn't have, like, a weird blow-up and get himself in some trouble and change their ability to get after them. That was odd. So you can't count on that ever happening again, because I think Andy Reid would, like, pretty much kill anyone if they tried to do that in this game. But at the end of the day, look, like, what they did was they adjusted where they were throwing so that they didn't have, like, the, throwing into Asante Samuel's coverage with those interceptions and on strange passes. So they adjusted well, which means their O-line was able to get just enough push to change the consistency and ability of them to, like, give just enough time to Trevor Lawrence. So I think that they're maybe better than they might seem, but I'm not going to give them the good designation. They don't rank in the top 10 in any metric for me, but they're not, like, completely unfortunate like some other O-lines we've seen, and they have adjusted well considering they're missing their anchor on at the left tackle position. But I'm going to tell you, if they have just enough time, one vulnerable piece, and it does require some context because the Chiefs have faced, obviously if they had big leads, then they allow more downfield passes. But the Chiefs do have the second highest passer rating allowed against 10-plus air yard passes. Those are downfield passes. In the league this season, it's 119. So, that's an area where if that gets going poorly, it could be a problem.
That's an interesting part. Cynthia Freeland is our guest, and it leads me into something that I was going to bring up anyway. In looking at the quarterback matchup and Trevor Lawrence, the player that he is, and the difference between his rookie year to this year is night and day, and maybe the difference between Urban Meyer and Doug Peterson could be as simple as that.
How does that work?
Yeah, you get a number 1 overall pick, maybe get a quarterback or a coach that can help that guy out along the way. But he's been much better this year. But he has been night and day a quarterback in a clean pocket versus pressure, where there's a number of quarterbacks that it's immaterial whether they're pressured or not, or at least they can rank near the top. Like Mahomes ranks near the top in rating when he's pressured, but also in a clean pocket, compared to others with those same, standards. But Trevor Lawrence is really good compared to other quarterbacks, all with a clean pocket, and ranks near the bottom when he is pressured. Is this one of those games to where we talk about the Bengals and Joe Burrow, that you have to sack him? Not only pressure, but you need to bring him down. Is this one of those games to where do you really need to bring Trevor Lawrence down as opposed to you just need to be a team that consistently gets pressure on him because he has shown that he is not the quarterback that can make some of those plays like we've seen some others do when he's got pressure?
The funny part is if you go back and you track those pressures and the downs and distances and the plays that are called, he's actually been improving because they've changed the ability to catch in the slot. They've been really doing a nice job of switching up the looks. Like some games it's Christian Kirk. In fact, it's not dissimilar from kind of the Chiefs strategy, having different leading receivers in lots of different games this season. So it's not dissimilar. He's nowhere near where Patrick is on anything like that. But, it is becoming more important to bring him down with a sack. It is becoming more useful for that because Trevor Lawrence is significantly improving as the season has gone on. So, do I think that it'd be smart to pull defensive backs into coverage and blanket his receivers because, he does have a lot of different ones? Sure. But I also think if you can get home against him, then you either need to get all the way home or not, because he is really, truly improving quite significantly in that metric as the season has dragged on.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. It's good to know because, it's always better to have 2nd and 18 after a sack rather than 2nd and 10 when you've got a pressure. I've learned that. I read that in a book last week, Cynthia. I'm the analytics expert around here. Those are the things I put it in a spreadsheet. It told me that. Put a formula in there. It says better 2nd and 18, better than 2nd and 10. Cynthia Freeland is our guest, NFL Network analytics expert. I do want to talk about quarterbacks a little bit. And, while the consensus is like, hey, Patrick Mahomes is the guy you would take, who do you choose between Joe Burrow and Josh Allen? I don't feel like they are compared to each other very often. It feels like Josh Allen compared to Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow compared to Patrick Mahomes. What about these two guys head to head? Who would you take as your quarterback, Josh Allen or Joe Burrow?
That's a great question. Now, who are you giving me as my skill position? Because the reality is that there's such different players.
Yeah.
Like Josh, the thing that I love about Josh is it feels like you never feel out of it even after that many turnovers, right? Like you saw a lot of turnovers last game, and somehow, while it was, if you're a Buffalo fan, you were probably sweating it, but the rest of us were like, okay. And that feels quite Mahomes-like. You just never feel like he's out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when it comes to Joe Burrow, because sure, Jamar Chase is awesome, T. Higgins has had good games, but you haven't seen anywhere near like consistency from like a Joe Mixon or the tight end. So I guess I'm colored by the fact that like the entire, like I just think the Bills have more offensive weapons to choose from than the Bengals do, and more consistent ones. And the top end guy, like sure, some people could say Jamar Chase is maybe going to be better than Stephon Diggs, or maybe is already, but you're not choosing between something that's like significantly different, right? You're not choosing between like the best wide receiver and like the 50th ranked wide receiver. So it's hard for me to not see the rest of the team around him and how that offensive line has been built for Josh Allen's specific set of skills, meaning they're out wider, like they spread the entire offense out wider. The tackles are further apart. It's just made for him. So it's hard. And
yeah.
I just like really like all three like of the top guys in the AFC, right? Like I really like Patrick, I really like Joe, and I really like Josh. So it's like choosing between like your sons, right? You're like, I guess some days I like one better than
right.
the other one, right? That's probably the most honest thing a parent can say.
It depends on what they're doing at the time. Who do I
Exactly.
like? I don't know. What day is it? Cynthia Freeland is our guest. So you mentioned the offensive line for the Bills and part of that sort of reasoning there and what's going on with the Bengals. And 15 games in a row, they played the same 5 guys. And now 3 games in a row, they have lost one. And they'll be playing against the Bills with 3 new guys from just 3 games ago. And we've already talked about it, Cynthia. The backup booty isn't as good as the starting booty when it comes to the offensive line. What's the difference now, and how much of a downgrade should there be for the Bengals with 3 new offensive linemen there from a few weeks ago in needing to win, the next 3 games if they can with a makeshift offensive line now?
Yeah, it's a massive swing to me because if you're looking at all the teams that remain, the thing is even without Von Miller, the Bills have been able to generate pressure. And, of course, it'd be better if Von Miller were there. But, Ed Oliver is having a pretty breakout season. Obviously, he runs from the inside, so maybe that's a little bit more of, I don't know, they're still missing Alex Kappa. So that's going to be tough. Like, that's, to me, the biggest difference in this entire game because, there's missing pieces on both sides. There's vulnerability points on both sides. But the fact that O-line is now down 60% of the starters, and it was an O-line that allowed, Joe Burrow sacked 41 times in the regular season. That's a ton. It's better than last season when he was sacked 51 times, but, that's still a lot of sacks. It's still not good, right?
Yeah.
It's better, but it's not great, right? It's like the 6th worst. So, that is a really tough thing to overcome. And there's a reason why last year was such a Cinderella moment when he was sacked like 1 billion times in a playoff game. And we kept talking about how he kept setting records for winning a game despite all of it. There's a reason why those are records. Because it's not a formula for winning. And you've seen them adjust their offense to be, include shorter passes. Jamar Chase this season has a shorter average depth of target. Joe Burrow's doing a really good job of using tempo, getting out of trouble. But it can only last for so long with that. You need to be able to have the deep pass. And, everyone that's watched AFC football knows that you need to be able to have a couple of deep gashes if you're really going to want to take a chunk out of any of these playoff AFC teams. You just have to.
Yeah. visiting with Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network analytics expert. These four teams, I know last week the percentage of winning the Super Bowl was the Chiefs leading at 19%, and then Buffalo came in second at 17.1%, then San Francisco, Philly, Cincinnati, Dallas, Giants, Jags, as it relates to the four teams that are remaining, or 8 teams that are remaining now. What does it look like now moving forward? Is it Chiefs still the favorite? I would guess, because Buffalo and Cincinnati have to play each other. Where are the percentages now that we've eliminated a number of teams and we're sitting here with the Elite Eight in the NFL?
Well, the good news, 2 good things happened for the Chiefs. The first is not having to play the Chargers again, because like you talked about, those divisional rematches and the fact that they're so familiar with each other makes it just a harder game, and they have lesser. So number one, the percentage went up because of that. Number two, obviously Bills and Bengals playing each other. That makes things even bigger. So in my model, the Chiefs have separated themselves. I think right now I want to say it's like around 30-something% for the Chiefs and like 28%, so maybe 4 or 5 percentage points different between and remember that number, they're going to get closer as there's fewer players involved, right? Like there's fewer teams involved. So, that number went up more significantly for the Chiefs because they get to play the Jags and I know that was a closer game against the Jags, but it's still better than the Chargers, and the fact that those two play each other.
What do you think happens this weekend between the Chiefs and the Jaguars on Saturday?
I think that it's going to be hard to forecast. It would be hard to forecast. Like this one, of all the games this weekend, this one feels like it's going to be the most boring from the standpoint of, the score differential. I think, and I really like a good underdog story, and I like the fact that like Doug Peterson's having success, and it's nice to see. I want, and Chiefs fans should also want like a strong contingency of quarterbacks going forward, because we want to see good play. We want the whole league to be fun, but if you're a Chiefs fan, I think you're going to have a nice, like this isn't going to be the one to sweat. Yet another week before things get dicey. But I am going to be tracking to see what goes on with how they stop the increase in pressure and the difference between, the Trayvon Walker and the Josh Allen, not the quarterback, but the defensive end, like how those guys get gobbled up, because pressure will be the key probably going forward in this whole tournament.
Do you have a margin of the Chiefs and the Jags this weekend?
It's over 7. I can't see the total number right now, but it's over. Yeah. It's more than a touchdown. So
over 7,
which is good because I hate being Debbie Downer to the Jags fans, but we're on in Kansas City here, so we're good.
The last one for you, Buffalo and Cincinnati. Wanted to get your prediction of what you think happens in this one, or who may win between the Bills and Bengals this time. Well, the only time now outside of a few minutes of play in Orchard Park.
Yeah, I think we're getting the AFC Championship game that I think everyone wants to see, which is obviously the Bills versus the Chiefs in Atlanta, right?
That's right.
Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
That's right.
I think it's just going to be too hard with that O-line, and then of course they're down. Chidobe Awuzie hasn't played in several weeks. I think like week 9, their lead corner went out. We saw Eli Apple just get torched by a couple of very interesting double moves by DeMarcus Robinson last week. So if you don't think Stephon Diggs watched that and then Gabe Davis watched that, I just think they're like, hey, which one of us? Because, Gabe Davis seems to come alive in the playoffs even more. So they watch that double move like, can we do that? Can we do exactly that one? Because that one looks great.
Hey, Sean, let's do that one. Okay, let's go with that one. So you've got Buffalo and Kansas City down in Atlanta in the AFC Championship game. If that's the case, we'll talk about that coming up next week. Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network analytics expert. Cynthia, great stuff as always. Really appreciate the time. Enjoy the divisional round games, and we will talk next week.
Absolutely. Have a great week. And, I think I'm going to be making myself I got to use more of my barbecue this week. So I will be enjoying some Kansas City barbecue.
There you go. That is a lot of people will, and certainly Cynthia right along with us. Thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate it. And enjoy the barbecue and the football.
Thanks. Have a great one.
Absolutely. You too. There's Cynthia Freeland, NFL Network analytics expert. Last year when she was getting ready for the playoffs, we sent her some Joes, and still has some little barbecue left, maybe some barbecue sauce or whatever, but getting ready for the Chiefs and the Jags. How about that quote? This feels like the most boring of the games from a score differential. That, paraphrasing here, if you're a Chiefs fan, a nice, easier day. Quote quote, next week, more dicey. Yeah, I would agree with that. Also, her saying that the Chiefs' percentages of winning the Super Bowl jumped the most from last week to this week, and it's Buffalo playing Cincinnati, so that certainly, factors into it. But she said also because they're not playing the Chargers, that had they been playing the Chargers, it would not have jumped up as high. It would be a little bit lower percentage of winning the Super Bowl, which is why I've wanted to play the Jags and not the Chargers because of that divisional round matchup or divisional opponent matchup. All of that stuff is why we see some of the upsets that happen in the NFL might be divisional opponent upsets. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. More Zone next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Don't dab babies, okay?
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We'll hear from the Chiefs coordinators, and we will hear from some assistant coaches today. We will hear from Joe Cullen, Dave Merritt, and Matt Nagy. So a couple of defensive coaches and also the quarterbacks coach for the Chiefs, and Matt Nagy, who has been talked about as an offensive coordinator around the league. So I guess an opportunity to say, hey, Matt, getting interviews and whatnot? Big gulps, huh? See you later. All right. So those will be the coaches, along with Dave Tobe, Steve Spagnuolo, and Eric Bieniemy. B, talked with the Colts. Getting interviews and whatnot. Big gulps, huh? Well, see you later. So they'll be at the podium today. We'll do that here in just a little bit. Cynthia Freeland, appreciate her joining us, analytics expert from the NFL Network, talking about this matchup coming up this weekend, a margin of victory over 7. Also, as it relates to Buffalo and Cincinnati, and look, we'll see what happens when these games are actually played. Because, again, we saw the Bengals last year go 3-1 in the playoffs. With an offensive, that's not the breaking news.
Breaking news from MLB Trade Rumors on Twitter. The Royals and Twins have discussed a Michael A. Taylor trade, but Kansas City's reported ask for Josh Winder has proven too high for Minnesota.
They're willing to part with Josh Snower.
If they had a Josh Breezier, I think that would probably get it done.
So, 3-1 in the postseason last year with a subpar, an inferior offensive line. I think it's different when it's odd. It's like, is it better to have an inferior offensive line that played together
all year? Yeah,
subpar all year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than a better offensive line, but then you lost some pieces, and now you're at the level you were last year. Only you're inserting pieces 3 weeks in a row, and now you've got a new left tackle, new right tackle, and new right guard on that offensive line against a Bills team that does not have Von Miller, but what Cynthia Freeland talked about in that, well, the Bills are still consistently getting pressure on the quarterback. They don't have Von Miller, the stud, but they are still getting to the quarterback. And she said the offensive line injuries for the Bengals are a, quote, massive swing for them. And you know what? Injuries, it sucks in the postseason. It does when those things happen. And I'm not sure there are any Chiefs fans that are feeling sad for another team having a rash of injuries on their offensive line in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, and also just to make it about this year, I think the Chiefs are largely one of the healthier teams in the playoffs. I saw a Twitter response to a tweet of Frank Clark being limited in practice yesterday and Mecole Hardman not practicing, and somebody responded with, why do we always have a rash of injuries? Dude, the worst thing on this injury report, yes, it was a real response. What? Well, don't look at Twitter too hard. I mean, you're going to see some stuff you don't like.
They have consistently been one of, if not the most, the healthiest teams in the NFL this year.
That requires you to actually pay attention to what's going on with other teams, and I don't know that everyone does that. Not everyone's, you're not going to be a fan of all 32 teams equally. But a rash is basically what the Chiefs have on their injury report. Like, it's just not that serious. So, and they're in pretty good shape right now.
A bad scratch over here. It's like, itch,
Yeah, they're just sort of like, there's
itchy. It's
something
rash.
Mysterious, but, it's not that big of a deal.
Hey, Doc, what is that? Seen that before?
I don't know what's going on with Mecole Hardman's pelvis, but
is there a rash there?
I don't want to. I do not want. That was not where that bit was going. That was a sort of an accidental place we've landed at. I don't believe that is literally what's going on with Mecole Hardman.
What about Frank Clark's groin?
I also don't know. Well, that's not really where I wanted to end up. But Chiefs are pretty healthy, and that's good.
That's what matters. Just a couple of rashes, and they'll be fine, as opposed to other people that apparently have limbs severed. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll hear from the Chiefs coaches and coordinators next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
History is a long time.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
I will hear from the Chiefs coordinators, Dave Tobe, Steve Spagnuolo, Eric Bieniemy, and also Joe Cullen, Dave Merritt, and Matt Nagy today. They get ready for the Jags 3:30 rematch. Saturday, rematch.
If we start doing
27-17.
voices, I'm going to start doing the press conferences before they start.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I can't help myself.
When it's all said and done, at the end of the day. And with that, I'm all ears.
What do you think Eric Bieniemy's response is going to be to the first question about the Titans requesting to interview him for an offensive coordinator job? I think it's going to be a chuckle.
I'll say this. I do appreciate the question.
I think that's, yep.
I appreciate the question.
I think we are on the right track
We're
here.
getting ready for the Jags this weekend.
He is where his feet are?
I'm where my feet are.
I am where my feet are. Yeah, that's right. And then Spags will go to the podium. Good morning, or is it afternoon? I don't know.
Happy Thursday.
Days
Whoa,
off.
Wednesday?
They run together. I don't even remember who we played this past week. Did we play? I don't know. I'll just open it up. I don't really have anything.
And then Dave Tobe gets to the podium, and his face is covered in grease paint. He's wearing full leaf glued on camouflage. He's just been in the trenches.
He's just ready to sort of dodge the firing line.
It's just going to be dodging the questions. It's all of the topics. It's that he's been out there. He's been maybe he'll come out in a lab coat, full goggles and everything.
In the lab trying to.
That might be it.
No, he comes out in the scrubs and a mask and the gloves.
That's
because
good.
he's been working on the operation.
I like that too. I like that. A little blood splattered. Yeah. Coach, whose blood is that? I can't. Technically, that's an injury update.
The surgical tools he just lays out, opens up opens those up right in front of him with a sanitized towel. Right there.
I can get you some good news, bad news here if you'd like it. McCole Hardman will not practice again today for the Chiefs. He's the only player not practicing again for the Chiefs. So
so same as yesterday.
Sounds like Frank Clark could do more than he did yesterday, but we'll see if Spags talks about where he's at and all of that later on. But that's the injury update there from the Chiefs as we await the pressers.
Second verse of the practice injuries, same as the first.
Yep.
For the Chiefs. No McCole Hardman.
Easy to remember the lyrics that way.
That's right. Henry VIII, Dave Tobe the first, we expect. And then Spagnuolo will be Bieniemy one way or another, one of those two, but it'll be Dave Tobe. He will be first up at the podium talking about, hey, you know what? Special teams, kind of a big deal when it comes to playoff time. How about that field goal kicker in Dallas, am I right? Whew. That guy's not going to be the mayor of anything. Keeps kicking like that. Would you guys move on from Butker if he did that in one game because they are sticking with him? What would you do in a situation like that?
I wouldn't vote for him for Maher of Texas. Am I right? What's that? Mayors are just for a city? Oh, you learn something new every day.
Here's Dave Tobe.
I don't want to talk. I guess we'll talk about bad things. Like we were sitting there, everyone's watching the Cowboys. They missed 4 extra points. All these things get Chiefs fans all upset. Kicking hasn't been easy around the league. We've talked that a bunch of times this year. How do you feel right now as you head into the playoffs for your bye week with your operation, with your guys on that part?
I feel good where it's at right now. We've had great weeks, great days of practice, and I think we're on point right now. And I really felt bad for that kid. I mean, watching that game, that was a tough one.
The Jags game last time, they came out and onside kicked you guys. I mean, you pretty much have to expect anything from them all the time. Is it even more now? You have to be ready for anything this season?
I'd be really surprised if they came out with a surprise onside kick again. I mean, that would be something. But we watching that, we know that they'll do anything. So we are ready for everything and anything. So we practiced it. We looked at it, and we'll be on point with that stuff.
The league a couple of weeks ago reportedly sent out a memo to all the teams about the holders using a marker or some sort on the field and everything. I know it's not something, it's something that kind of goes on, but not really talked about too much. Is that a big impact or?
No, not really. You could pick up a piece of grass and put it down. That's all you need to do, really. You just can't have a foreign, like a dime or something like that to bring on the field to put down. That's what they're looking for right there. So it really doesn't affect us. We don't do it.
there was a little uncertainty surrounding Harrison, and it seemed like he felt pretty good in the last game. How did he respond kind of coming out of that as far as confidence?
He responded well. I mean, his back, we had the spasms, and, he didn't have any issues, on the last day of practice during the week, and so we felt pretty good about it, but we still brought Matt with us just in case. But, I really it was a long shot that he wouldn't kick. So, and then he kicked great. He had a great warm-up and good pregame. No issues.
Dave, going back to what Todd was asking about Brett and how you felt bad for him.
Yeah.
How do you treat that in that situation?
That's a tough one. I mean, you got to try to get him settled down, go back to fundamentals, kicking the net and just, you could really feel for what was going on. He missed 2 right, and then he over-exaggerated and pulled 1 left, and then I'm going to go back to what I always do, and then he, because it must have been feeling really good for him that, the ball was going right. He just felt right. It just wasn't coming off his foot right. So, I mean, it was, I was feeling for the kid. It really was. It was, for Bones, too. I mean, the special teams coordinator, Fossil. So, tough situation for them.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I know your job as a coach and all coaches is always to try to fix it, right? To always try to find the issue. You're in the playoffs now. It's not like building anyone's confidence for later in the season or when we need them. These are the games that count. There are times that it's on you to say, and every position coach, Andy, you can't do it. Like in that situation, was it on Fossil to go and say, look, don't go to him. It's not there. I mean,
I guess at a certain point you might want to. I'm not sure exactly what they were thinking. When they had the ball on a 20 and they didn't kick a field goal right there, and they went for it, and did they lose confidence? I don't know. But it seemed like it. But who knows? But they kept kicking him with the extra points. I think that was good. He needed to get a positive. He needed to have a positive in that game, and they just kept going to him. And but to answer your question, there probably would be a point. Like if I felt, talking to Bucker on the sideline, that mentally he was not there, I might have to say something to Andy. But if I felt like he was kicking well into the net and, Coach, I got this, I know exactly what I'm doing wrong, that kind of feedback, I would probably just, let him go with the next one.
Is that the hardest thing to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a feel thing for sure. I mean, it's, that's coaching. You got to make a decision, you go with it. And
does it help how long you've been together with Andy that, like I would think if you're a first-year coach, you want to tell the head coach, we're gonna get it done no matter what. At the end of the day, you're supposed to win the game, and if it's like, hey, we need to go.
I mean, if I think it's gonna, having a deal where it's gonna hurt us and we're not gonna win the game, I mean, obviously you say something, but if you're in that game, they were up. I mean, it wasn't even a close game, so you want to keep kicking the guy. I think. I mean, I think they did the right thing there.
Have you ever been to that point in a game where you've gone to the head coach and said,
No, I can't remember. I was, as he was asking the question, I was trying to remember if I had any of those situations, and no, I've told him sometimes the wind's really picked up here. We can't, we were 35-yard line before, now we're 30, coach. I mean, we try to do that, and those things change, as the game goes on, but not a situation where a player, was struggling like that, and then you had to make that decision. So.
They've got a few guys playing in the first postseason game, and I'm just wondering if you hold up the Texans game of a few years ago of what a difference your unit can make.
Yeah, I mean, all you got to do is watch those games, and you see the quarterback sneak. I mean, he gets the quarterback sneak, and that game is different. Or the other game, the other game with 4th and 1. The Miami game. I mean, the delay of game. I mean, every play is so important. And then special teams on my end of it, I mean, obviously that's critical. So, the guys watched it, we talk about it all the time, and, we didn't go back and look at that game, but they know, what happened in that game and how important it was for us to come out and make some bigger plays on special teams to even it up. And, it worked out for us. So, I mean, every play is important, and our guys are dialed in right now.
It looks like it may be kind of like today on Saturday, a little rainy and all that stuff. Do you have different rules in place on trying to catch a ball or on a punt or anything like that when it's wet?
I mean, there might be a situation where it's so windy or wet that you just don't. Hey, we're gonna line up out there, but we're not gonna. We're gonna let we're gonna get the ball back. I mean, that could happen. That's happened before with us. With me. So, but most of the time we're going to, if the ball is kicked right to us, we're going to feel that we're professional athletes. We're going to try to make a play right there.
Last one, Haley.
Dave, real quick, kind of going along the lines of what everyone's saying, it's so important to have such a clean game in the playoffs. But looking back at the regular season, in your opinion, what was the cleanest game that your unit put together?
Probably last week.
Okay.
I would say last week was a solid, and that's a good thing. I mean, that it was right before the playoffs, and it's a good way to go in. We talked. That was our goal, was to be solid and clean in that game, and that's how we ended up.
Good. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
All right.
Look, if you believe in momentum and building off your most recent success or failures, then yeah, it's a good thing to go into the. I'll say you'd rather go into the postseason off that game rather than one of the rougher games they have had. So if you were to choose that, you choose that game. So interesting. Maybe their cleanest game was last week. Here's Steve Spagnuolo.
I checked before I came in. Hope you guys had a good bye week, if it was a bye week for you. We did. Fired up to get going here. It's always great to be in the playoffs. Got a little bit of work under our belt yesterday and ready to go. So with that, I'll open it up.
How much do you really get to put into one team? There were 4 possible opponents for you. How much do you dive?
I tell you, we concentrated a little bit more on us. Some things we thought we needed to work on, and then we looked at, we perused, those 4 teams and put a little bit more of a percentage into the teams we thought we were going to play, and then tried to pull things out that were common, and then worked on those last week. So that's kind of where we spent most of our time.
Steve, when you face a guy like Doug Peterson and his offense with so much familiarity between both of you, do you see anything that's different over the years? Do you have to look back at tape from 2, 3, 4 years of his offense? Like, how do you kind of go across?
Yeah, listen, Doug's really good, and I think he's done a great job with the players he has. I think it takes that long of a period to figure out what you have, what they can do, and what they can't do. And I think just like we were doing, trying to figure out what our guys could and couldn't do, I think they've done it. So we've kind of just rested upon what the body of work that they've had this year. Haven't dug too deep into, because when I was with the Giants, we played him when he was in Philly, so there was this, and there are some common concepts that people carry, but concentrated mostly on what they've done this year.
Steve, I know you don't study Patrick per se, but I suspect you have some sense of his evolution over these last few years, and I wonder if you can describe what it is, how difficult it is to contain a guy who sort of keeps evolving. It just seems like his definition of the line keeps.
What always amazes me about our whole offensive group is how well they know each other. It's like Travis knows exactly where what he's going to do, when he scrambles to his right or his left. And, the guys that, obviously Travis has been the one that's been with him the most, but like even Jarek, I just feels like he knows where Pat's going to be. And to me, that's the most amazing thing. How they ever get that done, I'll never know. And Patrick's a typical elite player. He makes the other 10 guys around him better. And you see that all the time. You see it in practice. You see it on the field. When I get to watch a couple of plays. Always impressive. I don't know if that helps you with the question you're asking. But
do you have some sense of Patrick still being kind of ever-growing, ever-changing?
Yeah, I think everybody in the league does that. I've had guys that were in their 15th year that felt like there was something new they learned or were evolving. Whether, you get to that part and then it's evolving into, do I got to keep my weight down because I'm older? How do I handle, treating my body, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I think every year's an evolution year.
Are there any areas on defense where you feel like you've exceeded what you thought you might be able to achieve, when, say, in OTAs or what you were thinking back then or camp?
I can think of the ones that wanted to be better, quite honestly.
What were some of those?
Well, the red zone, certainly. We've talked about that before. And I'm always a stickler for third down. Overall, we were okay, but I just think that's such a critical down, especially in the playoffs. I would like to be better at third down. And I don't think we had as many turnovers this year as we did a year ago. I thought we would have had more of that with the way we played, but you can never put your finger on that one. I don't remember a lot of dropped interceptions. I can remember a couple in my mind that stick out. The guys would probably be able to tell you which ones they did or didn't get. So maybe those 3 kind of critical areas. And I thought the pass rush has gotten better and better. The linebackers kind of evolved, the young corners. All those things have been pluses.
As far as the pass rush, have you come farther than maybe you thought you would have when the season started?
Well, I mean, I didn't, you know me, I've said this before, I didn't earmark a certain this or certain that. I was just always hopeful that it would get better as the season went on, and I think that happened, so.
Where's Jacksonville gotten better?
Well, I tell you what, they do a lot. They're kind of like, you know, way Coach Reed and the guys are here. You're probably not gonna see what they did last week, 2 weeks ago, or whatever. They change it up quite a bit. And so I think they've gotten to the point where their players and Doug, they're so well connected that they can do that in a game planning, change it around. Maybe early in the year, I didn't go back to, you know, it's really halfway through the season you look at now. I'm sure early with the growing pains, it was a little bit different. But to me, it's kind of like the whole playbook is there. You know, they're wide open. And listen, they're that anyway, and we're expecting anything. All fourth down plays, you know, go for it, take chances. We got to be ready for gadgets, anything like that.
You guys have relied a lot on rookies this year, maybe more so than other years. What tells you that guys like George and Trent and Jalen are ready for the game to get a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we preach this a lot. I mean, to us, it's an important game. The speed gets faster. Coach Reed's been talking about that all week. But just play the game that you've been playing. You know, I'll talk with him a lot about the balance between, you know, emotions and the mental part of it. Because when you get out of whack one way or the other, you don't play good football. But we'll be educating them, and hopefully they play their best football, just like we need all of them to down the stretch here.
Coach, Doug Peterson's going up against, obviously, his mentor, for lack of a better term. You did that in 2011 with the Rams. You know, a lot of questions like who has the advantage, right? Is it Andy? Is it the mentor? Like, what did you remember about having been in the room with the guy and then facing him?
Yeah, you know what I remember about that game? Because we opened up with him, I think, in 2011. We scored right out of the blocks. And on that score, Steven Jackson he pulled his quad. Like about 8 plays later, Danny Amendola popped out his elbow. He was done. And our best corner, somewhere in the third quarter, Ron Bartell, he got hurt. So we were ahead, and I thought we had a chance to beat, you know, the mentor, right? And all of a sudden it went the other way. That's what I remember. But I think it's always great playing guys that you've worked with, you know, John Harbaugh and, you know, Sean McDermott, all those guys that we kind of compete against, and you were brothers in the room.
Is it an advantage, or is it maybe
I don't know.
What do you remember?
Well, at that, you know, we were a couple of years removed from, you know, it was 06 was the last year with Andy, and then it's 2011. Now, when I was with the Giants, we were going against them, you know, right out of the blocks. But by that point, his team had kind of changed a little bit. It was Michael Vick, I think. It wasn't Donovan McNabb anymore. Like the years are kind of running together. But I don't know. I'm not sure who has the advantage. The team that wins? I don't know.
When you were, did you watch the game Saturday as it happened, the Jags-Chargers game?
In and out, yeah, because we were watching tape and stuff.
You know, we were all watching it, and you're sitting there watching a young quarterback, bad luck, and interceptions and all that. When you see that happening, I mean, what was your surprise level that they got down that much and he had such a bad first half and they were able to come back and do it? What's it say about Trevor to be able to get that?
I thought it was amazing. I mean, what the job Doug did, obviously keeping them like that, because it can easily go the other way, especially with a young team in a game like that. And then they kind of chipped their way back, right? They stopped them in the first drive, and then they come right down and score. I'll tell you what I thought was key, and I showed this to the guys this week. I talk about, I think I've said this to everybody here before. To me, the four most important series in the game, first and last of each half. In that game, the last series of the first half for the Chargers defense was a 2-minute, they ended up scoring, right? I thought that was big to get the 7 points at the end of the half, and then it kind of carried them, and it was impressive what they did. I mean, all we're doing here this week is trying to make sure, first of all, it gets that way, and then make sure we don't let them get back.
How much is opposing receiver height and length to, like, impacting where you're sending Legarius as far as maybe a bigger receiver?
Well, there's been a little bit. We've talked about that during the week with other teams. They got some big receivers. They all can run. I mean, things we look at is size and how fast, and then we try to look for the matchups and then go from there. But they got a good crew. I mean, they talk a lot about the running back and the quarterback, but you start looking out there at 7, 11, 13 and what they're doing. That's a good group, and we're certainly not overlooking them at all.
Great.
Warm out. Okay, thank you.
All right, there's Steve Spagnuolo getting ready for the Jags and Doug Peterson and an offense that he thinks will not look like it did last week or the week before when they played them on November 13th. That what Doug Peterson does is they have that ability to change it up quite a bit, as he said. Anything that he's been impressed by, maybe from OTAs, more frustrated by things. Here's Eric Bieniemy.
All right. Good afternoon. Every year we set a goal, all right, and obviously we set it as a team. The number one objective is to do what? Is to win the AFC West. All right, the next objective is to establish home field advantage. All right, last objective is to go out and win the Super Bowl. Now, we're in that playoff season time. Our guys have an understanding that every day, every moment matters, okay? One thing I think we do a great job of, and Coach Reed sets the tempo with this, and we talk about this each and every year, we have to create an energy. As a coaching staff, we got to bring in that energy to provide juice to our players about what we're pursuing. The next thing, we eliminate the distractions, okay? We want to keep all the stuff out of our way, keeping it out of these walls and making sure that we're focused on what needs to get done. We fear absolutely nothing. It's all about embracing the challenge, okay? And then we attack everything. You got to have a plan. You got to execute your plan. And you got to go out and make it happen. With that said, I'm all ears.
I wonder if you could take us back to when you guys played Jacksonville earlier this year. It was kind of maybe a low point for them after they left here. They had their bye week. They got really hot after that. When you're looking at them on tape this last month or so, how do they look different than what you saw that day?
You know, I don't think they look any different. I'll say this. We knew going into that game that they were a very talented team. I got a lot of good friends on that staff, and they do a great job. The thing that I'm seeing now is that those guys are embracing the process, right? They're starting to trust exactly what their coaches have provided for them. That's a very talented team. Those guys, they play hard, they play fast, they play physical, they're aggressive, and then on top of that, they have belief in what they're doing. You just don't come back and win the game down 27-0 and find a way to win. So our job is to make sure that we're taking care of our business. If we're taking care of our business, we'll give ourselves a chance. But this is a great team and a great opponent that we will be playing against.
Coach, we've talked before about Andy and you and how you guys make the opening script. How much of an advantage is it for the other side to know exactly how that process works?
You know what? I think there's a little game of chess and cat and mouse that goes on with that. And, I mean, you think about it. Doug kind of one-upped us and got the onside kick in the first game. So there's always a little game of that. But the thing is, we just got to make sure that we stay in tune to what needs to be done from our perspective. We know exactly what they're going to do. And obviously, they'll have a wrinkle or two. Mike Caldwell, who's a former teammate of mine, he's a brilliant mind, an outstanding coach, and he's done a great job. He's doing a great job of putting those guys in positions to make plays, and they're doing a hell of a job. So at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about what they do. It's about what we do as an offense and making sure that we can go out and execute our plan.
Eric, do you feel like you guys have more to present in the opposition from an offensive line standpoint, given that this is the second time that this group is going to go through the postseason together, or at least start a postseason together? Do you feel like there are more things, I guess, available to the offense because the offensive line has just had more games together?
You know what? That's kind of a tricky question. I'll say this. We always want to do what our guys can do. Our offensive line, in my opinion, they played a damn good game against the Raiders. They're doing an outstanding job. But I don't want to take away any success that defensive line has earned. Last week, I thought those guys, in my opinion, they won that game. You know, that defensive front took over, and they did an outstanding job in the second half of that football game. Obviously, I thought they did a heck of a job in the first half, but they did an outstanding job in the second half. Our guys just got to go out there and be who they are. We got to remain poised. We got to play it one play at a time and do what we're expected to do. So we don't need to change anything. We just need to go out there and be ourselves and have fun doing it.
There's so much of a discussion about getting the quarterback in rhythm as quickly as you can in a game. Obviously one of this magnitude, but obviously Pat's been through this before. But you have guys like Kadarius, Isaiah, MVS, Wes, Juju, they haven't obviously played in the postseason game in this offense.
Mhm.
Has there been a discussion this week about trying to get those other guys in rhythm as quickly as you can, considering obviously how talented your quarterback is?
There's always a discussion about getting those guys going and getting them all in rhythm. But the thing is also, too, we have great leadership. And obviously it starts at the top with our head man. But on top of that, we got some players who have been there and done that. So, yes, we do want to get Pat in rhythm. But one thing, Pat will tell you, he wants to get the O-line in rhythm. Trav will tell you, hell, he wants to get those younger guys in rhythm. So we're relying upon our leadership and getting those guys basically to go out there and relax, remain poised under pressure, and let's just go out there and be ourselves, play hard, be accountable to one another by playing hard and going out and just being who we are as a team. Is that the alert? Oh, that's an Amber Alert.
Coach, McCole looks like he's probably maybe not going to be available again. I guess the coach said he had a setback a little bit to come back. What's the frustration level or just the difficulty that it's been for the last couple of months of trying to work him back into it and having the setbacks? And what are you missing if you don't have him?
Well, first and foremost, our training room is doing an outstanding job with him. The thing I don't want to do, I don't want to comment on anything because obviously if he's not available, he's not available. So I want the training staff to take care of that. But the kid is a tremendous, talented kid, and he brings a lot to the table. But just like we do with all of our other players, it's our job as coaches to make sure that we're getting the other guys ready to step up and play big in those particular roles. Coach Joe has done a heck of a job with the guys that he has. KT has done a heck of a job. Sky Moore has done a heck of a job. I mean, hell, Juju, Quez, J. Watt, you know, the tight ends are stepping up, and our backs are doing a great job. So those guys understand that, hey, when someone's not available, it's all of our chances and all of our opportunities we got to make the most of, meaning we got to go out there and provide some big play material by making something happen with those particular players.
I know you said you wanted to eliminate distractions.
Mhm.
At this time of year, you always get asked about jobs, and we know that you're concentrating on this right now, but you did have an interview last week with the Colts. They tweeted that out. Did the process feel different for you this year than it has in the past? Because I know they had the deal where you got to meet with ownership last year in the offseason. Did it feel any different, any better than it has in past years?
Well, I'll just say this. It's always good to be recognized and always great to have that opportunity. But right now, you know, it's game time. So we'll worry about that when it's time to take care of that. But, yes, it's always good to be recognized for that. And, yes, do I believe that I'm qualified? Yes, I do. But that's not the issue right now. The issue is making sure that we're taking care of business, that I'm doing my part and being accountable to those guys who's counting on me to be available and be at my best when my best is needed.
You said the training staff's doing a great job with Cole Hartman, so something else went wrong. Was he not honest with where he was trying to do too much too early? But obviously the process, they did a great job, then the process is broken down somewhere trying to get him back. Because I don't think you get him out there practicing him, and Andy even said that this was going to be the week, and now there's a setback. Is there a lesson to be learned, like, hey, don't go so fast, young man, or don't do too much, or what went wrong?
There's always a lesson to be learned, but, I mean, that's something that's not my world. I'm not going to comment on that.
Well, I mean, if he's doing too much, it is in your world because you run the practice. So it can be in your world.
Well, I'm going to say this one more time. It's not in my world because it's a training room deal, whereas we're counting on our players and we don't discuss injuries. So that's where our policy steps in. Okay, and not trying to be an asshole. I'm just trying to walk a fine line. Okay, and I understand. All right, but I'm going to let that process take care of itself. You always want a kid to be at his best. Obviously, if that's not the case, then we continue. So I'll allow the people that needs to take care of that. They'll take care of that. Other than that, our job is to making sure is that the guys who are getting ready to play, we're ready to play, and we're expected to be at our best.
Eric, with Travis Kelce, last 6 games, I believe, without a touchdown. What are you seeing the defenses play them a little differently? And, you know, with so much postseason success that he's had, how do you feel he flips the switch in the postseason?
Well, you got to understand, Travis had an outstanding career for a number of years. And obviously, he's one of Pat's top targets. teams are always going to try and find a way to scheme it up where they can take him away. The only thing that does, and I think Pat has done a great job with this, is making sure that he can find the other guys who are available, who are open, who's not being doubled. But on top of that, Kels, he's a little slick. He understands the game. I'm pretty sure he'll have a few wrinkles up his sleeve, and we'll find a way to do something to make sure that he can have the success that's going to help us when it's all said and done with. Yes, sir.
A parent, you guys are incredibly high on Kadarius. What tells you, what shows you that he may have the ceiling of potential being a number one wideout for a team in this league?
Well, KT, first of all, he's a tremendous athletic kid. He works at it. He has fun. He's very, very intelligent. Every time he's out there, he's looking to make something happen. All right. On top of that, he loves the game. You can tell by his intensity in the classroom, and then just the feedback that you get from him. Okay. So the kid is a very smart, intelligent. He loves the game, and I think just being in a new environment has uplifted him. And it's raising his game to another level. So we're enjoying him. We're enjoying the process. He's enjoying the process. And the fun part is watching all those guys interact. The chemistry has been outstanding.
How do you see that? You say you feel like he's been energized by coming here. What leads you to say that?
Well, he's smiling. He's happy. He's enthused. You see it. Just his body language, stepping into the building every single day. And that's what we talk about, creating that energy, All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, there's Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator of the Chiefs, ready for the Jags. A lot of stuff to take away from that. That probably don't have a chance here between coaches. We're going to hear from Joe Cullen.
Let's really dive in. Let's really unpack it.
Oh, here's Cullen right now.
On the defense and on offense. And when you look at Chris, for us to be where we wanted to be right now in this position, we just said he had to have his best year. And, we feel, and I've been with him 1 year, but, Chris has done everything. He's put the work in. And when you put the work in, usually the results happen. He came back in great shape. He worked in the offseason. He had a great training camp, and it just carried it over. And he just kept chopping one day at a time, working, and hopefully he plays his best football here coming up.
Joe, Chris refers to you a lot in how he's played this year. Is there anything in particular you point to in terms of your relationship with him that you think has helped him along?
Somebody said, I heard, we have a great relationship. No, Chris works hard. It's like, the defensive line, they've all worked hard, and Chris has worked hard. And, like I said, when you put the work in as an individual and as a group, usually, you tend to have good results. And that's the big thing, Chris has things that I can't coach. His size, his athleticism, and his athletic abilities. So Chris has really done a great job putting the work in.
Do you feel like, this is maybe a different way to phrase it, but do you feel like you're able to reach him and push him? And do you feel like he responds to that well?
Yeah, whether it be myself, my assistant Terry Braden, Coach Spagnola, Spags puts him in great positions so he can go isolate and win the one-on-one. So I think, he's responded well to everybody coaching.
You're facing a team like the Jaguars with ETN, who's kind of that dual threat. Same thing with Lawrence. Just how much added discipline facing a team like that is your unit?
Well, in terms of Trevor, first of all, he can run. He can, he's got great athletic ability. He gets out of the pocket well on third downs and escapability, but he also has quarterback-driven runs and the college run game. And Coach Peterson does a great job mixing all that up. And the same thing with ETN. He's explosive, and there's a stat with him over, his runs over 10 yards are at the top of the league, and we're going to have our hands full. So that's a dual threat right there. And we just got to have all hands on deck.
Joe, you had to obviously at times push Frank in a similar manner. I just wonder what you felt like you had to push Frank on this year, and what have you sort of gained in appreciation given it's your first year working with him as well?
Well, I'll tell you, Frank's, from the right at the start of training camp, he's a great leader, number one. And he goes, it's full speed all the time in everything that he does on the practice field, in games, and he plays with reckless abandon. Not everybody can do that. And, he's come back this year, and then throughout the year, just a great frame of mind, and excited to where he can get rolling in the playoffs.
What makes you say that the frame of mind is where you would like it to be? What sort of showed that for you at some point this season?
Well, I just think when we went out to San Francisco, and then he just we were down Mike, we were down some guys, and then Frank, to me, really just went that way in that game. And you know, he had the suspension for a couple of games, then came back, and he did the same thing coming back, escalated and gave us some big wins. And you know, you look at the Houston game, you know, in terms of the Texans, I mean, it's in overtime. They stop us, they're driving. Who knows? He gets up off the ground, relentless effort, punches the ball out. We clinch the division on that game right there. So just a lot of things like that.
What's going to be the difference, if any, at the end of the year where George has been able to change these pressures into conversions, if there's anything that you've noticed?
Well, I think he's finishing. And, you know, the game's kind of slowed down a little bit for George, and he's got a great motor, and he had a lot of near misses at the beginning of the year, but he's just finishing his rushes at the top of the pocket.
Coach, how much, you know, you get a guy like that, he's talented, but most college kids they can get by on a lot of athleticism. How long does it take for a guy to be whatever he's going to be in the NFL, right? To learn the moves, then learn the secondary moves, learn the art of studying the opponent, the tape, working the chemistry with this guy. Like, when is a defensive lineman always going to be?
Well, I'll tell you, that's a really good point. To me, I think the hardest thing in this league, coming from college, getting into the NFL, is every offensive lineman you're playing is the best in their league in college. That's why they're drafted in the NFL. So, and they have a book on you before you get in the league. So I think what you have to do is figure out what works for you and continue to do it. And then when they stop that move, you have to have a counter. And that's the biggest thing. So when you look at rushers coming in the league, not many right away. I mean, I said it before, like Frank told George, he had to wait 3 years to be the starter. He had to work his way in, rush inside, then go outside. Same with Chris. You know, early in his career, he wasn't a starter right away. He had to have spots where, they played him. But George, we threw into the fire right away as a starter. And each game he's gotten better, and I think he's playing his best football right now.
Is the balancing act of stopping the run and the pass rush, is that like in college, maybe a little more predictable, but so many multiple fronts and different looks, is it hard for a guy to be able to handle both responsibilities? And that's obviously a big one with the Jacksonville. They want to run the ball, and if they're not successful when they don't. So
well, you just have to play every down, and then to me, I mean, as a starter, you have to play first down, third down, play the run, play the pass, play the screen. You know, you got to do all that.
You guys have done a nice job this year of knocking down balls at the line of scrimmage. Sitting there Saturday night watching 2 6'6" quarterbacks get a lot of balls knocked down. It's an art form, I guess. What sort of things do your guys have and the coaching that you guys give them that makes that a weapon for you all?
Well, I think when you look at George and Carlos, they were the two guys that had the most, and then we had other guys as well. I mean, they're tall guys, especially Carlos, and then George played water polo. So I think when you're not getting there, and you feel the quarterback, just put a hand up, and that's what those guys have done a good job of. And they've gotten in throwing lanes.
Awesome, thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
About that, Joe Colin. George Karlaftis played water polo. Huh?
What?
Yeah.
How did I not know that?
There you go. Is that Matt Lane?
You have any idea where?
Was it Matt Lane?
Matt Lane. Oh, it was
Lane.
absolutely Matt.
It was Matt Lane that brought that up, and we felt so stupid that we had never connected George Karlaftis' ability to track the ball with his hands while being pushed and blocked to the fact that those are the main things you would do in water polo, would be your upper body while the lower body is working. Here's Dave Merritt.
You really explain it to them, or they just got to go out there and play in one of these games to understand how different it is?
Yeah, they just have to experience it. As we all know in here, you have a preseason mode, a regular season at the beginning mode, and then, of course, as the season grows long, then there's another mode that we kick into. But once the playoffs hit, it's something that they have to experience, because trying to explain to someone how something tastes versus tasting it themselves, I mean, it's hard to do, and that's what you're trying to do with the playoffs. And so it's hard for me to explain to you what strawberries taste like if you've never tasted strawberries. And so you just have to taste it. And they have to taste it. And right now, the one thing that you try to do is you try to help these young guys understand that it's all about making sure that you get your rest and making sure that you study yourself first before you study the opponent. If you can study yourself and you know how you've played on film throughout the entire year, then you can actually hopefully fix some things that you may have seen on tape. So they have to experience it though.
The matchup with Jacksonville's receivers, a little bit of a success besides maybe toward the end in that first game. What do you see out of Christian Kirk and Zay Jones and that crew that you guys fully match up against?
I tell you, when I was in Arizona, we drafted Christian Kirk. I was in New York, we drafted Evan Ingram. And so you talking all these guys, Zay Jones was at the Raiders for a while. So our guys, you know, going against this crew for the second time, you know, I let these guys know that, hey, these guys are as good as any receiving crew that we've had come in here to KC this year. So size-wise, you're talking Zay Jones at 6'0", 2'1". His size, we match up with him very well as far as height with our big corners outside. And, of course, Kurt has so many moves inside. I mean, he does a fantastic job of running routes. And so having whoever's going to play inside on him, be it LJ or be it Trent, is going to be a great test. It was a great test the first time. I think Christian had 2 touchdowns maybe the first game. And so, you know, he is a different type player as far as when you put your hands on him versus when you don't. And so, but regardless of whether you can get your hands on a guy like a Christian Kirk or Zay Jones, you still have to win once you get in phase. And so, and that's one of the things that we've been working on all week is trying to, once you get in phase, what are you doing now? So it's going to be a great matchup.
What do you think has propelled LJ to seemingly at the end of the year and entering the playoffs become this lockdown type of corner where he can really curb the other team's top guy?
I think LJ's ability to go in and to lock in and focus again on one particular receiver, which a lot of guys, you can tell them to go and study a guy and they may come back with multiple questions and may struggle still on the field with some of the things that they do. But every time I speak with LJ and some of the film study that he's had, it matches up with what I've seen as well. So he's able to go in and study a particular guy, which frees him up from trying to study everyone. And so, but he's done a great job with that. And so the more he can improve on, you know, being able to go and match up on a number 1 receiver for us is going to help us out.
It seems obvious, but presumably that takes a couple of years.
It does, and this is year 3 for him. And so this is something I would not have done with LJ his first year. It's just like Trent, trying to have Trent go and follow the number 1 guy. So they have to mature and grow into that role, I believe, and LJ is at that point.
One of the things that they talked about Etienne is he's got some long runs, like 10 plus yard runs. That means your guys have to be involved in the run game.
That's right.
They all look very willing to do that.
That's right. That's right.
How important will that be on Saturday?
Very important. You're talking Juan and Justin Reed has done a fantastic job for us as far as coming down and making tackles. Etienne brings another element. He brings the home run element because he's a 4-3 kid. So if he gets out in space, he has a chance to take it to the house. And so our guys, just like every week, we try to look at it as a faceless opponent. But, you know, when it comes to tackling, it goes back to your fundamentals. Same foot, same shoulder. Eyes, see what you hit, making sure that your shoulder pads are connecting. Keeping your head out. So all those fundamentals will have to come into play when it comes to tackling all of these guys, because not only ETN, but even their receivers that run out the catch, they do a great job. And they're probably one of the tops in the league at doing that. And so, but being able to tackle these guys with solid fundamentals and knee bend, knee flex, ETN would be a challenge for us, for sure.
Coach, I know Cisco had a couple of hits on your receivers that, you know, got a flag, got picked up, other people wanted a flag. How hard is the job now for your guys with the speed and guys running in space, not you know, coming out of the stands, but running in space to hit the quote-unquote strike zone?
Yeah, it's you just said it. I mean, it's the strike zone. It's no more than if a novice is out there listening to what we're talking about, the strike zone. We try to tell our guys to make sure that they're hitting from the chest plate down to the top above the kneecaps. And so the strike zone is very important to be able to focus on the hips of where the receiver or where the running back is going, to make sure you're leveraging it to your next defender. So it's very important for those guys to be able to have knee flex when they're going in space, to be ready to go and make a move just in case they start to put their foot in the ground and change direction. Guys that are standing up high strike zone, you're hitting, tackling up near the shoulder pads by the head, that's no good. You're going to miss a lot of tackles.
And just as a thought, do you get frustrated watching the receivers and runners duck their head? And they're supposed to call that?
No, you know what? I mean, I don't. I played for some guys that 20, 30 years ago that was the way the game was. And so the Don Shula's, the Buddy Ryans, those guys, that's the way it was played then. And so you're trying to teach these guys to make sure that they keep their head out of contact. But when a runner or a receiver, just as I played running back in high school, if I'm catching the ball and I'm running, there was a gauntlet machine that you ran through and you lowered your shoulders. So they're doing what they're taught to do. We just have to make sure that we get maybe a little lower so we can have our contact a little bit under their pads, so. Other than that, thank you guys.
All right, there's Dave Merritt. Interesting talking about L'Jarius Sneed. The difference in his prep work now, when he's traveling with a receiver, he spends that week prepping for that receiver as opposed to all of the receivers. So it allows him to be a little bit more prepared for the guy he's going up against. But it takes a couple years in the NFL to be able to do that. And Sneed in his third year, he said he wouldn't do that with Sneed when he was a rookie, just as he wouldn't do it to Trip McDuffie right now. But those other guys also benefit by going up against lesser than receivers than Sneed is facing as a guy who is a number one cornerback that will, quote unquote, travel. But I thought it was interesting. He's getting ready for one guy as opposed to all these different guys. And we've seen McDuffie blitz a little bit from the slot last couple of weeks with Sneed doing that. So Spag's still getting that guy in the slot formation to be able to get after the quarterback, which is what he's used Sneed with. And by the way, against the Jags, L'Jarius Sneed had a number of blitzes off the slot against Trevor Lawrence. The Willie Gay sack in that was a L'Jarius Sneed blitz that he was untouched, got to Lawrence, hit him, Lawrence spun away, Willie Gay was right there to clean it up. So is that McDuffie now moving forward? We'll find out. But I do like the thought process of Sneed traveling with the receivers.
Me too.
And also, how much is he going to get paid in the extension this summer?
It's something we can talk about more later because Matt Nagy's at the podium right now.
Reset, you were remarking about that. Put that into perspective for us. I mean, is he above and beyond in that regard, or do you feel like that he's just sort of the standard for an NFL quarterback? You sort of have to have that.
No, he resets. I mean, the focus that he has is what I think is special. Now that we get into the playoffs and it's become, since he's been playing, it's almost become something that's common for him. But at the same point in time, and us as a team, but for him to be able to reset and have that bye week, I think helps just the mindset of where he's at mentally, preparation-wise, and then also physically just trying to really step back, do a little self-scout schematically, but then also on himself with where he's at. But he's just so locked in right now, and it has not changed literally from when I first got here in OTAs, but when I really noticed it was training camp. And then from day one, week one till now, he's not changing. He is very, very focused on our opponent. He's very focused on staying within the system and doing what he does best, not losing what he ad-libs on. But at the same point in time, I think that's probably one of his greatest strengths that we don't talk enough about.
And along those lines, sort of the other side of that, we were talking a couple weeks ago about his sort of ever-evolving way of pushing the envelope, and I wonder if you could describe what you think that does to a defense to know that he's always replenishing that.
Yeah, it never ends with him. His mindset is that way. It's kind of really always been that way. Going back and you watch the tape that he had in college, and every now and then he'll make you watch a few highlight clips too that he had. But he's always been doing it. He's wired that way. At the same point in time, defenses know that, and sometimes they want to try to take that away, and they want to tempt him to take the check down. And I think there's a balance there. So you want to be able to stretch him downfield, but be smart with the decision making. He knows that. There's a couple this year you guys can probably remember where there's a deep cross throw per se, 18 to 20 yards across the middle of the field, and everyone's sinking back, and you have a check down for a catch for 6 and a run for 6, but instead he maybe tried to throw a deep cross. But he's done a great job this year, in my opinion, of taking what the defense gives them, whether they're going to give him the check down or the touchdown downfield. And you have to give him so much credit, and Coach Reed, EB, et cetera, of being able to have him talk about that, literally every day it's brought up. And we joke about the touchdown, the check down, but at the same point in time, he takes that and wants to put it into action.
And you want him to have that notion of, I'm still looking for spectacular, right? But
always. Don't ever lose that.
Yeah, but it is a constant.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like sometimes I've heard this in the past, and I think this kind of relates to it, but there's reckless and there's ruthless. And I think those two are different, and having the balance between knowing what's reckless, we don't want reckless. But ruthless is a good word of being able to rip your heart out, go downfield, and you're going to give it to us, we'll take it. If not, then we'll be smart.
Matt, with Patrick, rookie year, and then second year, and then now you see him now. What's the difference between that mind mentality of getting him ready for a big game like this between comparing that young Patrick to now this Patrick?
Yeah, well, I can remember his first start, and that was obviously a huge game to him in Denver, till where he's at now. Now, I haven't been a part of all these wins and playoff games that he's had mindset-wise to be there. But I do see how he's wired right now. Again, he's been this way, whether it's a playoff game or a regular season game, what I've noticed this year, and I just keep thinking of the word that I keep thinking of is he's locked in. And to have that, I don't know anything different with him. He's so competitive. Like, he doesn't care where you play, who it's against. Every game he wants to be great, and I think that's one part of the DNA that he has.
Matt, we talked about that reckless versus ruthless.
Yeah.
Go back to his rookie year. I mean, I know he didn't play much in games, but you saw him in practice. Did he have that balance back then, do you feel like, or is that something he's kind of learned?
Well, he was learning our offense then, and it was probably, it was part versus whole. So back then it was part. He's learning our offense. Probably didn't know a whole lot about the NFL defenses at that time. So how to get in and out of a huddle, how to call a play. In practice, he was a scout team quarterback. So he's able to just cut it loose and make card throws. So it's a little easier. But now to take that to that last regular season game, do what he did, I think that's when we all knew, like, we felt pretty good in that game that this kid has the ability to be really special. And that's what he does. He's wired that way, and he practices hard. He studies hard. We were talking the other day about it, how much he's grown from rookie year till now. The stuff that people don't see is the process of what he does off the field from basically Monday to Saturday or Monday to Sunday. To me, him creating that own formula that works is where he's really become excellent at that. And it's a credit to the people that he's had before now, and the quarterbacks that have been in that room as well.
Last three, we're going to go. Okay. Forward, Pete. Go ahead.
How much of a realistic and how significant of an advantage is it for Doug to know exactly how you guys formulate game plans and such?
I think that's actually a great question. At the same point in time, I guess I'll say this. I don't think it matters that much. I think we all as coaches know how different coaching staffs prepare, and we all tweak different things. I mean, without getting into details, there's some things that are different now here that we do that wasn't the same way that Doug was here, So whatever that is, you could look at it. I think more so than anything, it's probably as a big picture conceptually, and you could say the same thing with his offense. We kind of know both, but it's hard even knowing. If you think you know what play is coming, it's still hard to stop it on both sides, So it's not. Trust me, I dealt with that in 2018 when the Chiefs came to Chicago.
Last three, Serene, PJ, and Todd.
You mentioned that. You also played Doug Peterson. I think he was 19, and like knowing each other. You kind of detailed it. Afterwards, you get together and share notes and say, well, this is what we did. I mean, I know you can break a lot of it down on film and figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
In the off season.
Yeah, we do. We talk through that stuff now. It was 18. I try not to remember that game. But in actually my last year in 21, Doug came to training camp, and so we were able to when he was out of football for a year, we were able to talk about some things that. From a head coaching perspective of things that he learned from his first time and that he's probably putting into action now, things that helped me out of how he did things. So I thought we have a great relationship. I spent a lot of time with him in Philadelphia and here, and it was a lot of great experiences.
PJ.
Coach, after you left the Bears, you had plenty of options that you could have done. What was the influence of coming back to work with Andy and Pat? How much did that influence you?
Yeah, it was huge. I did have choices. I had options, and you weigh all of that. You also have the family side of it too, and so you go through all of that. But in the end, Coach Reed, Patrick, Veach, EB, et cetera, all these coaches, everybody here. I had such a great experience my first 5 years here. So much, good times. And I also have to look for myself and just, how I can get better. How can I improve? Where can I get better? And what better way than to get back here with Coach Reed, look at it now when I'm in meetings and go through my day-to-day process. I see it from a different lens than I did here before. I see the way he runs things as a head coach to be able to help me just be better. And then the other side of it too, obviously, was with Patrick, being able to come back and see where he's at and help him grow, and he can help me grow, et cetera. And then of course with Veach doing EB.
I assume you don't always get a chance to watch games live. I'm guessing you were watching part of the Chargers and Jags game as it was happening. You were always watching the defense, but I'm guessing you watched a little bit of the quarterback. How surprised were you that Trevor got off to such a rough start and was able to, with Doug, right the ship and come back and win that game?
So a few things to that. Number one is, and I played quarterback all my life, so I try to put myself in his situation, meaning Trevor. And every game you play, whether it's your fault or not your fault, it's always your fault because it goes the interception side, right? So you got to be mentally strong to be able to get through that. I think it's amazing, and it's a credit to Doug and Trevor and the rest of their team and coaches on how they handled that situation. It's not easy against a good football team to come back from that deficit. But to their credit, they're mentally strong, and they did that. And I think it speaks volumes to who Trevor is as a quarterback. He's young. He's going to go through those times. And but also me knowing Doug and knowing how he's always very calm, cool, and collected, I know that probably in halftime there was no yelling and screaming. It was just very calm, come back out, and let's take it one play at a time. They did that, and that can certainly help a young quarterback have a ton of confidence and trust in your head coach and yourself.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
All right, there's Matt Nagy. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We continue rolling, break down, and talk about reaction from the press conferences. Also, Mick Shaffer joining us in the 1 o'clock hour. Sad fans? Maybe shot clock reviews? All that's still to come.
Sad fans is done, finally.
Yes, Sad fans done. All right.
It's 45 minutes, so it needs to start right now.
Let's hope that sad fans of other teams are not done this weekend. Where's on next?
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. The Zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We'll do, Beards. We'll do. Mick Shaffer's going to join us in the 1 o'clock hour. We got Sad Fans, and apparently it is an extended version of Sad Fans. So how about that?
It was like 10:40 when I first finished it, and I managed to shave it down to under 10.
Okay. So you've taken 40 seconds off of Sad Fans.
I did.
That was all the work. No, everything else needs to stay. The only thing that needs to go is there was 40 seconds of fat that you trimmed. Good to know.
It's like 9:40 now.
It's a full minute of fat.
Yeah.
How about that?
It was mostly just like silence in between the comments.
It only took you 1 minute to trim all that fat. That is not easy to do. What's your secret, Beards? What's your secret?
I have Adobe Audition on my laptop. That's my secret.
Oh, it's not diet? I thought it would be like diet and exercise.
It's the Adobe diet.
Oh. You know what? What I found is the secret to P90X, and this is going to be shocking. I found this out while doing the P90X, that if you work out for like an hour a day to almost like max energy exertion and eat nothing but really healthy meals every day, in 90 days your body can transform.
Really? That helps?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I found that out by going through said program of 90 days, Xing out the wrong nutrition, and working very hard for the, I don't know what the P is for. I was pushing.
It stands
90
for
days.
pushing.
Xing out the bad stuff. Stay away from the dairy. Screw you. Don't tell me what to do. This is my life.
Stands for Power 90 Extreme, by the way.
Yeah. Remember when ESPN was doing the sponsorships with P90X and they were having their on-air hosts do that? And one of them was Doug Gottlieb, and one of them was Mike Greenberg.
I bet those dudes crushed it.
And the body that they used on ESPN after they went through the P90X, you'd be surprised, was the D1 athlete.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Look at how cut the D1 athlete is after 90 days of working out. What about Mike Greenberg? You know what? Stamina. His fitness is better.
Well, he looks basically the exact same.
Yeah,
just a little more tired.
A little more tired. He can host 15 hours of live programming a day now. Watch, we'll prove it.
Just not his own show.
You know how strong. That's a really good one.
He had fill-ins again recently. Yeah. I went back to that whole thing.
You know how strong this guy's legs are in holding the Warrior One pose? You can't really see it, but understand what Mike Greenberg brings to the table. But look at the upper body of Doug Gottlieb, the Division I basketball point guard. Somehow he was able to just get right back into shape. Look at all the muscles he built.
And you can't blame Greeny for having some sort of muscle weakness, because for all those years Golick was carrying him around. I mean, unnecessarily mean-spirited shot at Mike Greenberg, who I have no real strong opinions for or against.
But after
just sideswiped him. But I like Golick, so I sided with Golick there.
After P90X, Greeny was able to, carry a little bit.
That's why I went solo eventually. He was like, you know what? Me and these new strong legs, I'm ready.
I can do this 25 weeks out of the year.
Let's do #Greeny.
I can do this. We'll take a time out. More Zone next.
Follow the show on Twitter @J810Anderson, @JB Brisco, @Beards McFly, and @Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
So I looked.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, so in the show, we've talked some NFL football. We've talked college basketball. We even talked a little Major League Baseball. We haven't talked Twitter, NBA, beef. Accidental beef?
Accidental beef. Stan Van Gundy was tweeting a lot about the current state of load management and medical issues in the NBA, and Kevin Durant responded with, "Stan's spitting." And then Stan Van Gundy responds with, "No, I'm not criticizing players, I'm saying," and he goes on and on and on and on. And Durant responds, "Stan, I agree with you." And someone else responded, "Spitting means you're speaking facts, Stan." And SVG's response was, "Had no idea."
I love the big Stan spitting. You don't bleep you, KD!
Jason, I just want you to know you've been spitting today.
No, I'm not criticizing anybody.
Now on Sports Radio 810 Sports Center.
Sports Center is brought to you by Zero Res. Zero Res is having a 2-day flash sale. Get 3 rooms cleaned for $99 and $100 off an air duct cleaning package. Tuesday and Wednesday this week only, so book your appointment today online at ZeroResKC.com. The Sunflower Showdown lived up to expectations last night in Manhattan with Jerome Tang's Wildcats taking down the Jayhawks in overtime, 83-82. The Chiefs will get their first playoff action this year at 3:30 on Saturday when they take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Frank Clark was limited in practice yesterday with a groin injury, expected to be limited, but maybe work a little more today. McCole Hardman did not practice yesterday, not expected to practice today either. But Jody Fortson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire have both returned to practice, though they both remain on injured reserve. We'll talk about KU, K-State, and Chiefs-Jags with Mick Shaffer of KSHB 41 next in the Zone. I'm Joshua Brisco. This is SportsCenter.
The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Final hour on a Wednesday, hump day edition of the show. Speaking of that, Mick Shaffer joins us, KSHB 41 sports director. Hey, guy. Huh? How you doing?
Humping away.
Yeah.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson, Josh Brisco, Beards, Mick Shaffer, KSHB 41 sports director, hanging out with us in the last hour. We get some sad fans, apparently. We got to save a lot of time for sad fans because it's roughly 72 minutes is how long sad fans is. So looking forward to that. Apparently, it's a mixture of all the losers from the weekend.
Apparently.
Every single
From every sporting event ever. Yeah. Like, we've got Japanese table tennis. We've got, Turkish soccer.
If you could bet on it, Beards found sad fans about it.
I'm just thinking of the Japanese table tennis Reddit users that are so pissed off. This guy's backhand is the worst.
Make that a deep dive there, Beards. Find
Beards,
some
this is
Japanese
next.
table
I'll see what I
tennis.
can do.
It's the worst backhand.
My brother
Google
bets
Translator's
on
gonna
that,
get
by the
some
way.
use.
My brother bets on that.
That's what I'm saying. If you can bet on it.
There's a tab for it.
Some of the things that I found early on in the DraftKings experience, I think I did bet on some table tennis.
See, here's the thing. I go to my DraftKings app.
It's better than betting on Grady Dick to make a lot of threes.
Hello.
And when I
Topical.
When I go to that and I open up table tennis, it sends me right to 1-800-BETS-OFF. It's weird. Just a direct link there. Just a direct link there. Actually,
Your phone starts ringing and vibrating, and like Men in Black come in and take you away.
These tabs were like bait for fish, okay? If you click on it, we know where you need to go. By the way, I just noticed your hat says Chefs. I just now noticed that.
Hey, did you really?
The whole show. It says Chefs.
It's on the front. It's on the. Oh, that's
Says We Hungry on the side.
It's
Great googly mogly.
I gotta show you a fun video, Jason. You're gonna love
I'm all right.
it.
I am all right. I don't need to see any of your videos, Josh.
Back in the day, I used to call them just in second reference or whatever, having fun on the set. I would call them the chef tones. And I brought it out. I didn't even know I said it the other night in some highlights, and somebody wrote me on Twitter, said, appreciate the Deftones kind of reference there.
That's great.
Really? I thought somebody on Twitter would be like, you're a POS. Chiefs are playing this weekend, and you can't get their name right?
And don't call him Pat.
I'm sure that was.
That's sort of what I was
that was sent
expecting
too.
it to be.
Are you sure? I saw it. On Monday, you had a gold tie. On Tuesday, you had a black tie, and now you're wearing a blue tie.
You think you're being absurd.
Are you a
right now.
Jag
You think
fan?
You're exaggerating right now.
Are you
You're
a
not.
Jag?
You're not.
Those are their colors.
Yes, and I'm here to cheer for your sports teams. That's my job. As journalists, we're supposed to be biased. Yeah, that's it. No, but I did, after the Chargers blew the game on Saturday, I tweeted, now it's going to be really hard for the Chiefs to beat the Chargers 3 times in a season. About 5% of the Twitter population did not get that, did not like it. Some were like, well, this turned out poorly for you. Or, like, no, it didn't actually.
You see the timestamp on that there, guy?
Yes, yeah.
Guys, I'm really looking ahead to next week's Bundesliga matchups here, and so I could take Augsburg plus 200, Mönchengladbach at plus 125, or the draw at plus 220. So it's plus money across the board. What do you guys like there?
I like Toppenhauer Hill.
Yeah. More of a Wiener Schnitzel type guy.
Okay, I'll look into those.
I'm not sure.
See if I can bet on Hill.
So, K-State wins last night, 83-82 in overtime. When you
What a game.
I enjoyed it. So when you were talking about no, I don't root for your team, I had mentioned at the start of the show, I specifically did not bet on K-State and KU last night.
I should not have.
And I didn't live bet, although it was like a siren that was calling my
Actually,
name.
I pushed, I guess, on my 4 bets.
A siren was just calling. It was a tractor beam, and it was KU plus 11.5 with like 10 minutes to go in the first half. And I'm like, I said I wasn't going to bet on the game just so I would watch it, But KU plus 11.5 feels like they're just giving money out. It was plus 11.5.
Okay, so you got
live
it at
betting.
plus 11.
I didn't
live.
bet.
Okay, gotcha.
I didn't bet it. I wanted to stay neutral.
So just at the end of the game, they have to be within
11. At that point, the live
Why
betting.
did you have
That's
to
why I
put,
said it
like,
was
the
free
mortgage
money.
on it, dude?
It was free money. It's free money.
K-State
So
was
anyway-
never going to win that game by 12 points, even when they were up by 12 points.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe that it got to 11. But regardless, I talked about at the start of the show. I enjoyed the game. It was a really physical game. It was a tough game to officiate. They didn't really do a great job of it.
Yeah, they acted like it was a tough game to officiate.
It was a tough game to officiate because both teams were physical and were forcing the issue in driving and attacking. They didn't handle it very well in terms of officiating.
There's a phase of the game where everything's a charge. There's a phase where no, it's all block. Then there's a phase of the game we're stuck. I mean, there's a head-on collision between Grady Dick and Naquan Tomlin. And nothing. And then the air was taken out of the gym as Naquan goes up to lay it in, and all the KC fans are like, okay, we can cheer for that. Okay, they're kind of waiting for the whistle that never came either direction, right? That there was way too much contact for that not to be a foul. But
last night was
I thought the refereeing crew was by far the third best team out there. I'd never seen the white-haired dude before, but he seemed way behind and was guessing. I don't know who it was. He was the one that waited for the missed layup to call the foul.
Yep. He was 4 or 5 steps out of position.
He was the
I know his name.
The last Grady Dick foul. I mean, he has got his back turned to the
that
driver,
was crazy.
running away,
with his arms up.
away. He knows, arms up, running away, and they call it on Grady Dick.
Jamie Lucky.
That's his name?
Jamie Lucky, yeah. It was he's rough.
The other teams were unlucky.
They're unlucky when he's out there. But I mean, to me it's the college basketball. We saw it firsthand of what I call the college basketball magic 8-ball officiating. That when it gets into a game to where you've called it so different at that point, that the final 10 minutes, how do I defend this guy? Can I take a charge? Can I even touch him? Magic 8-ball. It is decidedly so. That is a foul on Magic 8-ball. Ask again later. We're going to play on. There's a play on. Just get up and let's go. But credit to both teams that were saying, okay, well, yeah, official, we're going to put you in a tough spot because we're going to attack and try to force the issue. But it was still an 83-82 game overtime between KU and K-State in Bramlage or Allen Fieldhouse. Doesn't matter where they played. To me, I was thoroughly entertained, even though the flow of the game wasn't there, that it could have been a more entertaining game. But when you've got those two teams that were, what did Jerome Tang describe it as? A bunch of jabs. There were no haymakers landed. It was just jab after jab after jab. To me, it was just body blow for 12 rounds, and somebody had to win on the scorecard.
They did, and look, the final moments of regulation, the final moments of overtime were kind of anticlimactic, right?
Yeah.
In that, you didn't get a shot off. Well, I guess you got the shot off for K-State. They missed it. And then KU just never got a shot off there at the end of overtime. But, I mean, the last 2 points scored of that game, it was just like the Oklahoma State game last week. Similar time, too. To close it out with a ridiculous alley-oop.
Yeah.
I mean, that is unreal. To try that in that situation and then to pull it off, they're apparently really good at it. That just amazes me. And honestly, I mean, I was on a night where Marquise Noel was taken out of the game.
Yeah.
And you have a guy like Desi Sills that can come up with 24. They also have guys like Tomlin that can put up 20. And I guess Masood on some nights.
Yeah.
They have they might have more scoring options than KU, who I think is a great team with a lot of scoring options.
Yeah, on a night where Jalen Wilson scores 38 and Noel scores 4.
Yeah.
K-State wins.
And Grady Dick's still at 20 or at 16.
Yeah.
I mean, he got 54 between those two leading scores, right, for KU, and you still get the win.
And but you also look at the efficiency. So Desi, Noel scores 4 points on 8 shots, and Keontae Johnson goes to the free throw line a lot, but he was 7 of 17. He got 24 points, but Desi Sills scores 24 on only 11 shots. I mean, when you're putting the ball in the basket that efficiently, it's a big deal. On the alley-oop, let's play Jerome Tang. We didn't play this in the show yet. Here is Jerome Tang. He was asked about that end of overtime alley-oop play they ran.
It is something that we run, yes, and it's what we were looking for. I didn't necessarily think he was going to catch it and dunk it, but we wanted to isolate him on the side of the floor, and we knew that they would be on top of him.
What exactly did KU do to kind of get back into the game and give you guys so much trouble through the second half?
They hooped. I think they settled down, and they got really good players on that side, and they do a really good job. I think every one of their games except for the West Virginia game has come down to one possession, and they've been able to win them. And it's like they've been in those kind of games and those environments before. So, we didn't expect this thing to we expected a one-possession game.
Let's play Bill Self now. Bill Self was asked about the that same play, the end of OT, the alley-oop play by K-State.
It was a great call. I can't believe it was available. I'm really disappointed it was available, and that's the game point. You're down in stance. You're ready. There was no screen. There was no community spun, but they've done that before. That's one of their deals. I think I've seen it once in tape that they've done that, and Jalen played great. The kid plays 45 minutes and never comes out, and puts us on his back, scores 38, has to drive it every time to get fouled, and so he played great. But that was one possession I certainly wish we could take back.
I wonder if he says he wishes they could take back, what would he have Jalen Wilson do differently?
Not play high.
Yeah, just not front him.
Yeah, and so and not let yourself almost get pushed up that high, because you to run that play you have to create space between yourself and the basket. Now with a guy like Keontae Johnson, you don't need a whole lot of space. But then also he's probably, they're at the level now to where he's probably seeing when that other guy clears out and there's nobody between him and the rim and nobody on the block. That's when you move back to not front him or at least be on the side or gear against that. And it's funny just watch that replay over and over again. Just the little sign. All he did was throw his hand out, and Noel knew to throw it, and you could tell that had been practiced so many times. I go over and over again. I'm like, okay, what's better? The play design, which was great, the pass, which was amazing.
Yeah,
I land on executing it on Johnson. I think there's a lot of coaches that can draw that up. I think there's a lot of point guards that can throw that great pass, which that was a perfect pass. I think there's less humans out there that can spin and do what Keontae Johnson did.
And probably, if you had to do it over again, when they clear out, you'd have more of a help defense on the
who cleared out
side.
there? Who was the K-State player that? Yep.
You had Sills and Tomlin and
5 comes through. I'm gonna pretend like I'm Justin Reed with all of the names and numbers and everything. You can't blame me for not having. Is that Sills?
What number?
5.
No. For K-State?
No. That is
no.
13.
Who would that be?
Number 5 is
early in the season. We're our first time through conference play here.
It's not Cam
I
Carter.
should know the damn number.
Not Ish. He's 25.
No, it's not Ish. It's gosh darn it. No, it's
is it Green?
It is Cam Carter. It's Cam Carter.
Green's 4.
No, Cam Carter's
5.
Cam Carter's 5. Yeah, because Desi Sills is 13.
Yeah, so Tyler Higbee clears out, and then
Tyler Higbee clears out.
I thought you said Cam Carter clears out.
I did. I was doing a bit. It's okay, guys.
Oh, good job. Yeah.
So I was doing the Justin Reed thing, the numbers and names and all of that. It was a throwback to something we spent like a week or so talking about pretty much every day. But I delivered it pretty low key. Thought I'd just sneak it in there. Maybe we'd keep it moving, and then
no. When it's tough for us to understand, I think the listener probably is having a.
That doesn't seem like a standard we hold ourselves to very
difficult.
often. So
even more difficult. So yeah, but that clear out though, maybe
and it
he
looked
has
like
somebody
Jalen
else
wasn't
down.
paying attention to Noel when
Right.
he kind of moves over to that side of the court. He's got to.
Well, I think what Jalen Wilson is expecting is that they're
side.
clearing out, so it's going to be one-on-one, me and Keontae Johnson. So he's going to try to dribble over on this side and get him the ball, not a backdoor alley-oop play is coming. Plus, does Jalen Wilson think that he might have help side defense for somebody that's on the clear outside just to be closer to the lane, be closer to the block, and to be able to jump up and grab the ball if there's an alley-oop there? But it was a full clear out. And maybe because it was cleared out that quickly, it's like, okay, you start dribbling the ball and boom, spin, go, catch it, dunk it. It was a great play design. Absolutely.
Well, and Johnson kind of almost fakes the screen there too. So that's
I mean, it was
the action that starts.
It was an absolute great play design by Jerome Tang. Turns out the guy can coach. The guy can absolutely coach, and they get the rebound off of the missed shot by Jalen Wilson after the timeout by Bill Self. That was a very poorly timed timeout for Bill Self, and probably if they're up 84-81,
I just don't. Get
I don't
the
know what
timeout.
happens.
I mean, if there's 10 on the shot clock, I get it. Yep. It's 4, right?
4 or
or was
5.
it 5?
There was like 6 when he started running over. It took him a couple seconds for them to grant him the timeout.
I don't know if you're going to be any less hurried inbounding the ball with that much time as you are right now with what Wilson was getting the ball at the top of the key basically with that much time.
That's a shot you might settle for if you have 5 seconds to get the ball in and find a shot. Like, it wouldn't be your first. You mentioned earlier, Jason, like you'd like to run a play there, but it was so hurried, it was so condensed. I think they put it back to 5 when they actually got when they came out of the timeout, but I think it was real close to 4 as it was leaving Jalen Wilson's hand.
Let's hear Jerome Tang. We played this in the first hour. It's great from last night. This was all over the place on SportsCenter. His message to the fans on the court when he jumped up on the scorer's table. Here is Jerome Tang.
This is not about who we just beat. This is about us winning. It is amazing what you can accomplish when you do it out of a motive of love and joy and passion. Now, I told y'all, we'll get you one court storming. From here on out, expect to win.
Mic drop. Mic drop. Let's go. So, I mean, I really like Jerome Tang.
I love Jerome Tang and the Ted Lasso type message there.
Mm-hmm.
I almost wonder if that's their approach going forward. If the fan base buys in, and trust me, most of the fan base is not going to buy in because it's fun to hate other. It's fun to hate other.
They may buy in.
Is it any coincidence that he picked up the same cadence for the KSU chant as the FKU chant they had? Before
I do wonder
if
they'll buy in non-KU games, not chanting that when KU's not even there.
Yes.
As opposed to when KU's there. Sorry, Jerome.
Sorry,
sorry, Coach. Love you, but you know what? Bleep those guys.
We're going to meet you halfway on this, okay?
Here's the thing, Coach. My whole life. You've been here 5 minutes. My whole life. Bleep those guys, all right?
Funny. So if it works, it almost gets under the skin of your rival more than the whole, being all living rent free in their head. To where, there's the phrase "kill them with kindness" is kind of a cliche for a reason, right? It can hurt, and I just wonder where that comes from. Does it come from Baylor not really having a rival? I mean, who is it? TCU?
Well,
is it Texas? I don't know.
I know
Where does it come from? Hey, I know the most important thing as a head basketball coach is you got to beat your rival to keep your job. Oh, crap, I just took a job where my rival is the winningest program in the history of the sport. I need to tamp down some stuff. It's just one game. Oh, crap, we won, man. I could have really built this up. But in all actuality, I think it is a sincere message, and he probably respects KU and Bill Self and all that, and doesn't want to poke the bear, right? And look, it worked, I guess, if that had anything to do with it for the first round of his Sunflower Showdown experience.
We've got to go to break. We're late on breaks because of the press conferences, and we want to play the
35-minute
sad fans. So I'll just paraphrase. He was asked in the post-game press conference about why he addressed the fans, And he had said, well, quite frankly, I was disappointed and annoyed at the chant that was going on. And his point was, when people are watching, they should hear us chanting our name and not their name. When people are listening, they're hearing the KU coming from the KSU crowd when they're tuning in. It's a good point.
It's a role reversal almost of like, a lot of times the KU crowd is like, okay, the little brother, we don't have time for you.
Yeah.
You're kind of adopting that same sort of mindset. Okay, you know what? We don't have time for you unless you're in our
Expect to
building.
win. No more court stormings. Expect to win. Got you one. Have some fun. Enjoy it, guys. Don't do it again. It's great catch. Don't ever can do it again. We'll take a time out. We've got Sad Fans next.
Follow the show on Twitter at J810Anderson, at JB Briscoe, at Beards McFly, and at Sports Radio 810. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Nice job, Josh.
Nice job, Dylan.
Nice job, Christopher. Way to go, Beards.
Thank you.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Josh, this is for you.
Okay.
My buddy who writes for covers.com and does a lot of the betting stuff on the soccer side of it.
Yes.
Big Jags fan.
Okay.
Big Jags fan, so he's been listening this week.
Got my Bundesliga tip?
He texted, he said, tell Josh the play for Bundesliga is to just parlay both teams to score in every match because nobody plays defense.
I'm on it.
So there you go. He
All
actually
right.
had a breakdown for you.
I'm going to go figure out where to put my Bundesliga dollars.
You joked about it. He gives you actual advice. Nobody's playing defense. Parlay, everybody's scoring. There's going to be at least, you know what? It's like the
what do we do?
both teams to score minus 240, minus 130, minus 150.
So apparently they're expecting guys
They're
to score
scoring out here.
Everybody.
What's the bet to make? I'll make it.
I'm just going into. I'm going to
He
try.
said
I'm
parlay.
going to pick a game from the Bundesliga and get both teams to score on a few of them here. So I'll rattle a few off. And tomorrow, at least these don't start until 1:30. So I'll have to.
He said just parlay
1:30.
the games.
Friday, got Saturday. Okay.
I'm not good at parlays.
Parlay the both teams to score in all the games.
On a couple of games. Okay, I'm going to dive
Just
in
parlay
here.
both teams score. Both teams score. Both teams score. Both teams score.
I will report back on
do.
Monday with how I fared and if this is my new hustle.
All right, we'll see if Josh becomes sad fans for Bundesliga or if he starts to look that up while one team does not score. This is an extended version of the Super Wild Card Weekend. Sad fans, Beards.
I should have called it Super Sad Fans. Dang it!
Super Wild Sad fans. Beards, take it away.
And now, a list of things that Miami Dolphins fans said on Reddit after losing to the Bills in the wildcard game. For the first time in my life, I got to see a playoff game that wasn't a blowout. I might just see a win one of these times. All the casuals that want McDaniel fired. He would just end up on the Patriots to torture Dolphins for a decade. Playoffs in his first year, and they aren't close without him. Well, everyone that took Buffalo minus the points at least. I am left with blue Yet, it still feels like a happy ending. Calling out McDaniel for not running the ball 30 times with the backup running back behind a practice squad offensive line is precisely why he's coaching and you're complaining from a sofa. Miami lost to the Dolphins. Sad day. Comment. I think the worst part about today's game was listening to Tony Romo talk ad nauseum about how good Josh Allen's tastes. Reply.
Oh, man.
The Dolphins have the champs on the... Well, they're not actually the champs, but the Dolphins have something similar and akin to a champion.
So
Gobble it up, Tony. Clock management, false starts, illegal shifts, illegal blocks downfield. All f***ing season. I can't believe we became the Ken Dorsey meme. And now, the winner of things that Dolphins fans said on Reddit. Okay, guys, how big of fans can you possibly be when you keep calling for McDaniels to be fired? McDaniels is the coach of the Raiders. And now, a list of things that Minnesota Vikings fans said on Reddit after losing to the Giants in the wild card. Only fitting that we go 11-0 in one-score games in the regular season and lose in the wild card round by a single score. Take Ed out to watch the sunset. Cut the old slow guys and fire Ed into the sun. Show no mercy. Quote, I think you're going to love how this defense plays. Ed Donatel. FYI, our offense and special teams had 0 turnovers, meaning every single point scored was on the defense. Comment, I will personally pay for Ed Donatel's airfare to Thailand. Reply, that old man can walk there if he wants to go. I think the defense is going to surprise a lot of people. Ed dumb Donatel. Every week I'm surprised at how many no-name wide receivers are wide open. Comment, the was Kirk seeing with that last pass? Reply, the off-season. I aged 10 years this season. Being a Vikings fan is pain. What if the real frauds are the friends that we made along the way? Ed Donatel is my enemy. See you next year for more pain. Fire Ed Donatel, not from his job, from a cannon into the sun. Donatel before the game talking about the defense. I think you'll like the way we play. No, Ed. In fact, I did not like it. Comment. This was my first year as an NFL fan and a Vikings fan. Thank you to all the Scolders out there for making it such a memorable and enjoyable first year. Can't wait for the future. Reply. Hey, bud. Believe me, you can wait. Donatell better be fired before I sober up. So, Wednesday, give or take a day. Quote, you are not a true Minnesotan yet because you still carry hope for Minnesota sports. From my wife. Don't ask, don't Donatell. Kirk Cousins is the biggest tease in NFL history. And now, the winner of things that Vikings fans said on Reddit. Whopper, Whopper, fire in Donatell, Whopper, Whopper. And now, a list of things that Baltimore Ravens fans said on Reddit.
Ed Donatell currently still
honestly
employed.
Might be the most snake-bitten franchise in the last decade. The last 2 minutes were a crime against football. I'm happy the season is over. I hated basically every game. Get Greg Roman the out of our city immediately. This, that, the plane that flew on, the Bengals, Ohio, the time management, and especially Greg Roman. It's over. We're free. Free at last. Comment. Prochet got that dog in him. Reply. Dog. On the NFL subreddit, there are Falcons fans who are in shock that a team could screw up a fourth quarter so badly. Let that sink in. Greg Roman can suck all our
Oh my God.
Jim Harbaugh season. And now, the winner of things that Ravens fans said on Reddit. To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Greg Roman. The vault plays are extremely subtle, and without a solid grasp of fast food joints, most of the jokes would go over a typical viewer's head. There's also Greg's nihilistic outlook, which is deftly woven into his characterization. His personal philosophy draws heavily from failed third down conversions, for instance. Fans understand this stuff. They have the intellectual capacity to truly appreciate the depth of these plays, to realize they're not just funny, that they say something deep about life. As a consequence, people who dislike Greg Roman truly are idiots. Of course, they wouldn't appreciate, for instance, the humor in Greg's existential catchphrase, Andy Isabella jet sweep, which itself is a cryptic reference to Mark Trestman's 2015-16 season. I'm smirking right now, just imagining one of those addlepated simpletons scratching their heads in confusion as John Harbaugh's genius unfolds itself on their television screens. What fools, how I pity them, laughing emoji. And yes, by the way, I do have a Greg Roman tattoo. And no, you cannot see it. It's for my lady's eyes only. And even then, they have to demonstrate that they're within 5 IQ points of my own. Parentheses, preferably lower. Beforehand. And now, a list of things that Tampa Bay
That was one of
Buccaneers
the most
fans said on
beautiful
Reddit
things I've ever
after
read on
losing
Reddit.
to the Cowboys in the wild card. The ending this team deserved. Leftwich getting fired is my Super Bowl. Breaking news, Brett Maher missed the flight home. I say we promote Leftwich to head coach. He'd be the perfect tank commander. Comment, I wish Troy Aikman would retire. Reply, Joe Buck. Dak has set all kinds of records for Cowboys and probably played the best game of his career. Troy, he's all right. Send the coaches to Thailand immediately. At least my season tickets will be cheaper next year. Toilet bowls. Comment, I just wish we could draft a quarterback and be one of those teams that's somewhat good for 7 seasons in a row. I'm sick of the 20-year Super Bowl, 20-year Super Bowl cycle. Reply. Just like real pirates, we come apart every 20 years.
Wow.
I blame Bruce Arians for not unretiring halfway through the season. Dude sat in the owner's box scratching his left while this team melted down. And now the winner of things that Buccaneers fans said on Reddit. Make-A-Wish recipient Todd Bowles finished his 4th consecutive losing season as head coach, as a struggling Buccaneers squad gets blasted on a special primetime playoff edition of Monday Night Football. When asked for comment, Bowles stared at the camera with his arms crossed and farted before walking off. Eyewitnesses at the scene described the farts as wet and uninspired. Bowles and company, unlike quarterback Tom Brady, are expected to return next year to continue all over the dreams of Tampa Bay fans. At the time of writing, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are projected to have the first pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. And now,
we got
a list of
poetry this
things that those 5 LA Chargers fans said on Reddit after blowing a 27-0 lead in the wild card. Joe Lombardi shouldn't have been an offensive coordinator the first time he got the job. How somebody else hired him to neuter another young star quarterback is the most mind-boggling thing I've ever seen in football. Comment from username Brandon Staley. Fire me. Is anyone surprised on what just happened? To be honest, when it was 27-0, you knew how the game was going to end. So, fire them all, right? Chargers are the only team in the NFL where its fan base can't be confident when it's up 27-0. That's Chargers football, baby. Me, I don't know why I watched this. End of me. Comment. Staley defenders, where the y'all at? Let's hear you guys. Reply. Relax, dude. It's still early in the season. He'll get it fixed. Wearing my Chargers jersey in public, and I am absolutely embarrassed. We all secretly knew. Editorial comment by Beards McFly here. This next one is a picture of a white stallion in front of the ocean with a rainbow behind it, and there's a nice little logo of the Charger symbol in the corner. And on the bottom, it just has text that says, I want to die. Good thing Staley built up all that momentum so that now we can launch him into the sun. Suggestion that the admins change this subreddit to a subreddit about Dodge Chargers or Charger horses for the foreseeable future. I better not meet Brandon Staley or Joe Lombardi in person. Staley obviously fired, but should also be in jail. The sad part is slowly coming to the realization that Herbert can't overcome the Chargers curse. Hey, I'm sad. Parentheses. You're having a rough week as an adult who lives in the United States. It's time for some Chargers football. By God, that's Sean Payton's music. I thought the 2010 loss to the Jets was bad. Not for a moment did I consider that this was only an appetizer compared to this buffet of failure. Good job, Brandon Staley. Now your players can get all the rest. Momentum into the offseason.
Oh, yeah.
And now, the winner of things that Chargers fans said on Reddit. Y'all can stay in LA, don't come back to San Diego.
Turn their back.
Stay in LA.
Woo! There were some gems in there. There are some really depressed writers in this round.
I think my favorite was one of the early ones with the Vikings. What was Kirk Cousins seeing on that play? The off season. That was great.
I like the one that
I like the really long one about Greg Roman.
Oh my goodness,
And
man.
multiple times in that, I'm like, is he actually defending him? And then you'd hear some more sarcasm.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite. It's what I sound like trying to explain BoJack Horseman to people. It's how it goes.
Greg Roman, BoJack Horseman. Same guy.
Handshake emoji.
And I'm glad somebody brought up, because we didn't get around to it, but Tony Romo and the Dolphins in the commentary of, the champ is on the ropes!
Not really the champs,
Not really
Jim,
the
but
champ.
they're pretty close to the
They're
champs.
close to being the champs. They're there, but they are on the ropes, Jim. Tony! I don't know what's going to happen, Jim. I'm excited, though. Let's see what happens here.
And or the commentary of Al Michaels and Tony Dungy of Jacksonville is taking the lead.
Look at that play.
We'll be right back.
Scored a touchdown on that one, didn't they? Yeah. So threw the ball, he caught it. So as you can see right here, he's open.
Tony Romo this weekend sounded like a guy doing a Tony Romo impression, which is good for us. And Tony Dungy sounded like a guy who just tried Quaaludes for the first time.
By the way, while I joke, I really like Nance and Romo.
Me too.
So
Me too. I'm not going to say anything about Al Michaels and Tony Dungy because my mom taught me if you can't say anything nice.
You know what your mom taught me?
Tell me to go to a break.
Go break.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts. The Zone with Jason Anderson.
Have you done it? What'd you do last night in Vegas?
I was in Kansas City last night.
Cool.
Weekdays from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, wrapping things up here on this Wednesday edition program. Soren Petro comes your way. Coming up next. You know, one of the things I talked about, we talked a lot of K-State and the win and what it means for them in the first hour. But one of my KU takeaways in this was the importance of KJ Adams, because you know there are certain things that he does that obviously Zuby and Clements can't do because they don't play that often. But I think end of regulation and end of overtime. End of regulation, it was Zuby in the screen and roll with DeJuan Harris. And that timing was messed up because then it was like, do I pass it? Do I stop? And then DeJuan Harris sort of like halfway sort of
that
passed
was great
it.
coaching. I mean, that'd be great film work by Tang and that. Like, you realize you're gonna get out there and defend the pass against Zuby 25 feet from the bucket. Yeah, because I've seen that play before. I don't want them to get into this set.
And I wonder if Zuby's like fading away instead of like KJ Adams sort of squaring up and then getting the ball and then turning. Either way, but good defense by K-State on that one. And then end of regulation, it was Zach Clements coming up to set the screen, and he never touched anybody. And DeJuan Harris looked like he started early, so it's like, is that chemistry? Was Clements setting the screen in the wrong spot, and then DeJuan Harris just had to go? I mean, I don't know that they win or not, but I would guess they probably get a shot off if KJ Adams is a screener.
And Masood was probably out of
those.
bounds there with like a second and a half left.
Yeah, but
that's par for the course with that crew last night.
Yeah, but I've been told late in the game that you want refs to swallow the whistle.
That's right.
I've been
Even
told that
bounds, yes.
with like 2 seconds left, you just let the players
There's parts
play.
of the game you don't want them to officiate the same way as other parts.
That's right.
Something like that.
Mainly 10-minute increments that were officiated differently. It's odd. Thank you, Mick.
You bet, guys. See ya.
See you Friday. Program next.
When